Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
It was September 26. Sophia was going to her first job, or rather to the interview. She was very nervous before her first day. After all, she had never worked anywhere before. She had already 6 times reconsidered the lips with red lipstick, because it always went wrong, then the cat jumps and the hand twitches, then the stroke turns out to be too wide. Anyway, it was a girl's job. 2 p.m. she was already terribly late for the interview. After all, the bus had left half an hour ago, but she didn't really care about that fact yet. Right now, she was trying to make her appearance presentable. Perfect. She had always wanted to be perfect in everything. In school, she had always been a round, excellent student. Not because 4s were penalized, but because she had always had a need to be better than everyone else. And now, for the first time in her life, she was prettier. And going to the first job in her life, the girl tried to keep everything in order. In her bag, she put all the necessary documents, double-checked them once. 6. She was terribly nervous, but tried to ignore the feeling. Sophia was often nervous before exams, but that didn't stop her from passing them well. Always when she was so stressed her right arm would hurt. She didn't know what it could be related to. But everyone has different peculiarities. Peering around the Catavassia, she double-checked one last time before going out. Was the iron and television off? That was almost a ritual, too. She realized herself that this anxiety wasn't going to lead to anything good, but there was no way she could help herself. One day she got so tired of double-checking closed doors 20 times that she started writing everything down in a small notebook. The girl wrote down the number and the items that needed to be done. And when she had done everything she needed to do, she would check off those items with a check mark. That's how we ride on the bus to school or whatever important business we have to attend to. When Sophia suddenly remembered that the iron was off or the stove was running, she would open this diary and calm down. This kind of anxiety probably comes from her childhood. One day, her teacher gave her a 2 for forgetting her homework book, which she had been doing all night. She cried all day. Her parents deprived her of dinner. It was from that moment that Sophia started checking her briefcase 1,000 times. And then this habit carried over into everyday life. Of course, that morning the girl was already 90% likely to be late for the interview. She had to wait half an hour for another bus, and of course there was no money for a cab at all. This was not like her. She was always punctual and responsible. Very often she came not at the appointed time, but half an hour or even an hour earlier. This time something happened to her. She didn't get up on the first alarm clock, washed her hair in the shower 10 minutes longer, picked up her clothes, and put on makeup for an awfully long time. Or maybe the reason it opened up was that she absolutely did not want to go to this job interview. The waitressing job was far from her dream job, and deep down she hoped that whoever was hiring her would find her unworkable and irresponsible. But on the other hand, there was no other opportunity to earn money, and she had to pay for her studies somehow. Her relatives took her in after her parents died. They gave her an ultimatum that she would pay for her studies herself. They themselves had a rather precarious financial situation. Salaries were just miserable, and it was necessary to feed a family of 5 people. Therefore, having consulted with them, Sophia decided to work part-time as a waitress. This job did not require any mental or hard physical labor, but the pay was quite good. For such simple duties, it was even a little embarrassing. Maybe this restaurant was very expensive, but it wasn't in the center and it wasn't popular with people. So it could hardly be called expensive. Maybe the owner of the place was generous. However, it was only a guess. We had to find out for sure, and that's why Sophia dragged them in a stuffy bus full of people. 8:00 a.m. on a Sunday. And where do other people go this early on their day off? Did everyone have a job interview today? These people were getting annoying. One big man smelled awful, then all over the bus. Sophia prayed that her budget perfume would remain persistent. The other was talking so loudly that the whole town could hear it if it wanted to. But can't personal space be respected? What kind of disrespect for other people? Sophia sat patiently and waited for her stop. A couple of times she got up, because elderly grandmothers always had to give way, although these grandmothers sometimes looked healthier than she was. Finally, the street was announced, and Sophia rushed to the exit, the building she had been invited to. It turned out to be a business center, and it seemed that all 3 floors belonged to the same man she was now going to interview. He owned a chain of restaurants in Sofia, and didn't understand why the man still hadn't moved to New York. I mean, he certainly had the opportunity. "You're an hour late," a secretary with a decent bust remarked snidely. Why does she wear such an open shirt? Traffic was terrible. Sophia lied, embarrassed as she shifted from foot to foot. Couldn't find a seat. "Will you also be late when you work for us?" "No, not at all. This is the first and last time," Sophia declared. She felt terribly guilty. She was rarely scolded for being late. It was usually others who were late, not her, and she wasn't used to reporting back and finding normal excuses. "Jacob will see you in 15 minutes. The receptionist said indifferently, looking at the computer and not raising her eyes to Sophia. The girls did not even offer to sit down, let alone drink coffee. And after all, in the movies, future employees were treated with respect, but it seemed that was only in the movies. Jacob turned out to be a punctual man, and exactly 15 minutes later he called Sophia to his office. The study was not at all remarkable, and neither was its owner. Nothing out of the ordinary. A plain white room with an equally plain businessman in a tie. The man looked to be about 27, pretty young looking. It was even surprising to see such a young guy in a wig, but their cool office attire. "So, Sophia." The man stretched out thoughtfully, looking at the papers in his hands. "Sit down, please." "Why are you standing?" He turned to her. The girl only now noticed that she was literally staring at the guy, gone into her own thoughts and probably embarrassed him. She woke up quickly, sat down on the comfortable chair. It was so soft, she didn't want to get up from it. From this angle, Sophia was able to get a better look at the restaurant owner. He was a handsome brunette. That could have been the end of it, but she wanted to get a better look at him. His long curls fell beautifully over his shoulders. The long bob suited him well. The neat stubble was also to his face, and the plump lips added some zest. She could call him the man of her dreams. And then, when the girl realized in what way she was thinking about her potential boss, she immediately blushed and forced herself to stop this indecent stream of thoughts. "In your resume, you wrote that you have never had experience as a waitress." Finally, the guy said. The girl answered in the affirmative. "Well, I have long owned the business and boiled in this mess, so I arrange interviews, even for employees like you said, Jacob. I'm sorry, but everyone needs waiters, and they almost always hire just anyone. I want only the best to work in my restaurant." There was a silent pause, during which the guy looked at the documents, then at the girl. A few times he even smiled at her. What gave Sophia any hope for a good outcome? That smile evoked only positive emotions in her. She caught herself feeling some kind of sympathy for this gentleman. It had only been 15 minutes, but why does she always fall in love at the wrong time and with the wrong people? He'll be her boss if this works out. "What can you tell me about yourself?" Jacob suddenly asked. "It's all on the resume." Sophia was embarrassed. "Yes, but I want to hear you, not a blank piece of paper. Tell me more about yourself." "Well, I am 19 years old, as you already know. I am a second-year student of Philfac, studying different languages. I need a job so I can pay for my studies." Sophia started giving out facts. "I'm not interested in your biography. Tell me about yourself as a person." The girl was embarrassed again. She was not ready for such questions. But then the guy decided to help her. "What are your hobbies?" "And I like to play the guitar, and I also play the piano professionally. I went to music school. I used to be great. Can you sing?" "Very good. And what 3 qualities describe you as a person?" Sophia was stumped by this question. She thought for a couple of minutes before answering. It seemed to her that there was a catch in this question. "I am responsible, punctual, and a very quick learner." Jacob was shaking his head from side to side. He clearly didn't like these answers. "Listen, don't you want to go for a walk?" Suddenly he asked. Sophia was completely confused. Now she didn't understand anything at all. She didn't understand what the guy didn't like about her answers. "Excuse me," the girl clarified. "Well, I suggest we get some fresh air. It's too stuffy in this room. Don't you think?" "Well, I guess we can go," Sophia said uncertainly. Then Jacob stood up, walked over to the floor hangers in the shape of a tree, and took off his coat from there. Leaving it and taking the keys from his pocket, he gestured for the girl to leave. She didn't hesitate a minute and went out the door. The guy closed the office and went with Sophia to the elevator. But they were stopped by the secretary. "Jacob, excuse me, where are you going?" she asked excitedly, approaching the guy. She stared into his eyes like a lost puppy. Sophia almost threw up from that look. That girl had no brains at all. "Sophia and I are going for a walk. If more clients come, canceling all the appointments. I'm busy today." But Jacob tried to object. Secretary Betty, "Follow orders." With these words, pushed Sophia to the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. As they rode, Sophia was seized by a feeling of some trembling excitement and expectation of something. It seemed to her that this day would not be as boring as she had assumed before. "You're probably wondering, where are we going? Right?" asked Jacob as they left the building. The girl was so afraid of saying the wrong thing that she just nodded. She didn't know what to do in situations like this. This was happening to her for the first time. She realized that she looked just like this receptionist. She probably had the same feeling and look, but she couldn't help it. And if she said the wrong thing, she'd lose her job. And that's a rare chance. It's hard to find jobs in this town, even for waiters. It was kind of weird though. It was a small town, and it was a port. However, there were indeed very few vacancies at the labor exchange. They walked in silence for about 5 minutes, and then turned a corner. There was a cozy cafe. It was not so big, but there were not so many visitors. Cold air blew and filled their lungs with freshness. The cafe was decorated in bedraggled coffee colors. There were cozy signs, menus, and even a modern-style painting hanging somewhere. Sophia didn't understand much about modern art, but there was clearly some sort of meaning embedded here. A teapot with eyes pours tea on a book, perfect nonsense. But the author clearly had something to say. Sophia looked at this masterpiece so much that she did not notice how Jacob called her for the second time. "Sophia, do you like chicken?" asked the guy once again. "Yes, of course," she answered like a robot. The guy grinned and passed this information to the cashier. Then they sat down at a table near the window. "You can order something. If you want, I'll pay." Jacob smiled, hanging his coat on the back of a wooden chair. Sophia shamelessly opened the menu and looked carefully at all the items. And there was indeed a large assortment of food here. What kind of cafe was this? She hadn't been here before. The girl decided to order a croissant with coffee. Then Jacob went to the cashier again and handed over this order. "How do you like this place?" asked the guy. Sophia attentive. "And the place looks quite cozy," she concluded, not very emotionally. "This is my favorite cafe in this city," Jacob explained. Then they met eyes. The guy seemed to be waiting for Sophia to react, but she didn't understand what he was getting at. "Okay, I'm kidding. This is my cafe," the guy laughed. Sophia didn't understand the joke at all. He had brought her to his own cafe to brag about how beautiful it was. What was the point of all this? The guy was acting awfully weird. She noticed Jacob looking around. "Do you see a waiter?" he asked. Sophia looked around. There was no one in the hall, only the cashiers. 2 customers at different ends of the hall. "No," the girl answered. "Honestly, probably in the kitchen." "No, you're wrong, Sophia. They're not here at all. And that's because I take this business very seriously. This guy over here," he pointed to the cashier. "He's here. He's been bartending for 5 more years. That's why he deserves to work here. Auntie says I'm not doing business right, and that's why we don't get many customers. But that's not true. I just have a very responsible approach to my work. I want to give my customers nothing but the best. And the service has to be top-notch." When Sophia realized what he was getting at, he doesn't want her to work for him. She has no experience, no age, and she doesn't know how to talk to people. "Then why did you bring me here? To humiliate me, to show me I'm no good at." Sophia was getting hysterical. She rarely got hysterical in front of people, but this situation upset her very much. She had been given hope in the beginning and then taken and almost told it was a joke. Jacob looked at her with a smirk. He seemed to enjoy making fun of people. But Sophia, although she was shy, wouldn't let someone make fun of her and humiliate her. She stood up and headed for the exit. But suddenly her elbow was caught by a strong male hand. "Wait, Sophia, we haven't finished," Jacob said more seriously. The girl turned around and sat down at the table again with a hurt face. She tried to pretend that it didn't hurt her at all, but she failed. She was never very good at showing emotion. "You didn't even finish listening to me," the guy said. "But it's clear enough. I'm not so stupid that I can't understand your hints. I just don't see why you would, Sophia. I wouldn't waste my time on someone I'm not interested in. I brought you here for a reason. I needed to see how you felt about yourself, and I came to the conclusion that you don't value yourself at all. What makes you think you're not worthy of this job? I have no experience. I'm no good at anything. I thought this would be a simple question and answer type interview. The answer is you caught my eye at first sight. You have some zest, but know that you're really underestimating yourself. So I made a slightly different decision from the one I wanted to make a few minutes ago." Sophia was intrigued and found it best to wait and remain silent. "I'll give you a trial period of a week, and you'll do everything right. I'll hire you full-time." The girl was stunned by the offer. She was both humiliated and at the same time given a chance. A few minutes ago, she had already lost any desire to work here. But now the interest made her go for it again. At that moment, they brought her croissants. And to give herself time to think, and at the same time not feel uncomfortable with the silence, she began eating those croissants. When she finished, she said, "Okay, I accept your offer." Jacob smiled victoriously and led the way back to the office to sign the necessary paperwork. Sophia returned home in high spirits. She was finally hired, or rather on probation. But it was better than nothing. She just had to work hard for a week, and she could do that. As already mentioned, the girl either performed her duties perfectly or not at all. "I've been hired," she announced to her family sitting in the living room. Uncle was sitting on the couch watching TV after a hard day's work at the factory. The aunt was cooking something at the stove, and at the same time arguing about something very loudly with Alice, her daughter. No one even paid attention to Sophia's statement, but she didn't take offense. They had always thought of her as nothing, just a roommate, nothing more. Aunt Kelly was a very tough woman, yelled at for every misdemeanor, even though Alice and Sophia were both over 18. Alice stayed with her mother all the time. They lived like cat and dog. Kelly Peters' husband ignored it all. He seemed to be completely disillusioned with married life. Sophia was still puzzled as to how they could possibly be together. The divorce should have come after the first year of marriage. They were completely unsuited for each other. Kelly was a fighting woman, strong and fiery. Often she dropped her husband for anything she wanted to do. Was home and didn't wash the dishes, didn't put away his socks, broke a mug. What kind of growth? My mother told me not to marry you. I'm a fool. Kelly yelled at her husband. He was just a common philanderer. No, not even a philanderer. At least they could have an opinion. Peter didn't give a damn a long time ago. No matter how much his wife yelled or scandalized him, he never said a word. In this family, the head of the family was definitely a woman. Of course, such an environment in families affected, and on Alice, their only daughter, she became callous, rude, and indifferent to everything. Often sent everyone with motherly words, threatened to kill, and sometimes threatened her own death. She was very insolent. It's like she's not out of her rebellious teenage years. Piercings and piercings, lip, eyebrow, nose, ears. And she recently got a piercing at the cup. Her makeup and clothes were just as provocative. Bright makeup never hurt anyone. But only if it wasn't considered every day, which was what she did every day. Sophia tried to convince her that it was wrong. It attracted too much attention, and there were a lot of bad people in the world. Sophia was a year older than she was, but she felt like a strict old woman who was giving her a lot of moralizing. But Alice only sent her back far and wide. Sophia sat on her bed and read a book all the notes were written. And tomorrow, after studying, she had to go to her first shift. There was noise and shouting in the apartment again. Kelly had had another disagreement with her husband. From morning until late afternoon, the endless yelling continued. Sophia was used to it, and there was nowhere to go. She wouldn't go out on the street. Her parents died 10 years ago, so she'd been raised in this house since she was 9 years old. She learned how to survive here. From a very young age, to keep her head down, to run errands when not asked. She wasn't happy anyway. However, they stopped beating her. Aunt Kelly's mother had recently lived in the house, but she passed away last year. Then everything went downhill, as if the devil himself had cursed them. They were demoted from their jobs, Peter at home. Expensive things broke down every week. First, the fridge broke, then the washing machine, and as if that wasn't enough. He was in a car accident. He wasn't hurt, thank God, but his car was almost totaled. Sophia had long ago realized that she would pay for her tuition, if she had to, as well as her other expenses, solely on her own. Suddenly, Alice entered the room and sat down at the dressing table. This room belonged to the two of them, and there were a total of 3 in the apartment. The girls shared the smallest one. Kelly's mother used to sleep on the sofa in the living room, but now Peter slept there, because Kelly didn't want to sleep with the ungrateful pig Sophia stirred. Alice was obviously in a hurry to get somewhere, as she quickly painted her eyelashes and applied lipstick to her lips. "Where are you going?" Sophia asked excitedly, putting her book aside. Alice didn't even turn around and continued to put on her makeup. Sophia got up from her soft, warm bed and walked over to her cousin. "Alice is going somewhere more strictly," Sophia asked. She was worried, not because she was concerned about her sister's safety, but because if anything happened to her, it would be her fault. It would be her, Sophia. Kelly is such a conniving woman. If she wants to, she can kick her out of the house. It doesn't cost her anything. Why are you so attached to me? Alice couldn't take it anymore and stopped ignoring her sister. "Answer me, I'm worried." "The second mom is here." "Under painted eyelashes," said Alice. "I'm going to the club with the girls." "Club? What club, Alice? Are you out of your mind?" "God, Sophia, how boring is that?" The girl stretched out unhappily. "You've never been to such places in your life, so you dare to judge. Go read your textbooks. Read, Alice, but think about it. What if something happens to you? There's dangerous people out there who could slip something into a cocktail. You wouldn't even know it. You must have had boring parents like that. Too bad they died." Alice stood up, picked up a small black purse, and went to the door. Sophia tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen to anything. She left and her parents didn't care at all. A frustrated Sophia went back to her room and continued reading her book. However, all thoughts were now preoccupied with Alice. She was just an unstoppable damsel, disgustingly well-mannered and, of course, completely out of control. In a way, though, Sophia envied her freedom. To do whatever you wanted and earn as you wanted and have fun too. For example, Sophia herself would never go to a club, and not even because she didn't want to, but out of fear. During the short period of family life, her parents managed to instill good morals in her. In all things, Sophia was genuine, a catch, and never got into trouble. The worry for her sister never waned, and even at 3 o'clock, so the girl decided to dial Alice. There was a dial tone, and then the girl heard a sound in the room. Alice had forgotten her phone or left it here on purpose. Whatever it was, she had no connection with her sister now. Sophia got even more agitated and decided to tell Aunt Kelly everything. She would definitely be worried about her daughter, and together, they would find a solution to the problem. But Sophia didn't take into account one fact. Her aunt hated her. Aunt Kelly, here's the thing. Alice she didn't leave unsure, Sophia declared. Cautiously entering the bedroom. The aunt was sound asleep and was very unhappy to be woken up. Gone and gone. Sluggishly, she muttered to herself, "Why won't you sleep? Get out of here. You don't understand, she's gone to the club." The aunt rose up on her elbows, her eyes flashing with anger. "Jesus, girl, how old are you? What are you doing meddling in everything? What do you care about Alice's life? You're the one who was against this behavior." I pretend I'm against it because I'm a mother. But you're only 19. You're gonna be worse than the old lady at the door. Who do you think you are? I'm just worried about her. I think it's very dangerous. If you worked better, you'd be tired and you wouldn't walk around the house at night like a ghost. I've already got a job, unlike your precious little girl who's out and about. I'm in a bad mood too, Sophia replied. Pray she doesn't bring you an unexpected surprise later. How dare you? Kelly couldn't take it anymore and slapped Sophia on the cheek. She couldn't even say anything out of offense. As soon as she came to her senses, she immediately went to her room. Kelly was still muttering to herself, but Sophia wasn't listening. She had just been insanely insulted. Getting slapped for just being concerned was humiliating, wrong, and cruel. The next day, Alice didn't show up, but Sophia didn't care anymore. Since Alice and her mother treated her like that, she would treat them like that too. Sophia quickly got ready for school, fed the cat, and left the house. Today in the university was very boring, and almost in all pairs the girls slept. Finally, the evening came, or rather after dinner time the study was over. Everyone went home, but not Sophia. She rushed to work. What exactly influenced such a cheerful mood? The girl didn't understand, but she really had a lot of fun going to work, although a day ago she couldn't even dream about it. A day ago she had hoped, even though theoretically she hadn't been hired yet. The probationary period guaranteed that she would get half of the salary of a regular employee. She came to the very coffee shop she wanted to run away from in a scandal. Thank God Jacob stopped her. She wouldn't have found a job as good as this again. Not everyone is willing to take on students who are only willing to labor in the evening. Jacob did. He was a very kind man. Sophia didn't know much about him, but this noble act already spoke volumes. This time, to her surprise, there were quite a few people sitting in the cafe, a far cry from the number she had seen the first time she had come in here. Maybe it was the time. Is it really always this crowded on her shift? She wouldn't last long like this. Having had enough, she walked over to the cash register. There was no employee, so she had to wait. Then a blonde-haired guy finally came out of the kitchen. He looked like a student too. He looked very stylish. Even the fact that he was wearing a uniform didn't spoil his image. His blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and his long ears looked as if they belonged to a real elf, and he looked like a wood elf himself. All the features of his face were refined and elegant, and on the saint his eyes shone with green emeralds, but just a miracle, not a colleague. Finally, this guy noticed Sophia waiting patiently behind the counter. He gave her an appraising look and took two leisurely wiping clean glasses from inside. You're Sophia, right? She replied shyly, averting her eyes to the side. I'm Eric, nice to meet you. The guy introduced himself politely. Eric is a pretty rare name. I agree, but I have an excuse. My dad is from England, and I was born in New York. But then my parents got divorced, and I decided to stay with my mom. We moved here by this North Sea is pretty cool. It's a lot colder than New York or London, though. But is that what I'm getting at? Yeah, my dad gave me this interesting name. It's quite beautiful. Don't you think so? Now all you have to do is find your Ariel. Sophia laughed. Oh, you like cartoons too? Sophia looked at him with surprise. Never mind. Ian laughed. I'm 22, and I'm still a fan of any cartoon masterpiece. And I don't mind Disney princesses. Smiled the girl. I'll give you a test someday, the bartender promised. Suddenly something caught Eric's eye. He was looking somewhere behind Sophia. The girl turned around and saw the man of her dreams. He was wearing a black diver and a chain on his chest. He was wearing plaid classic pants. Jacob was simply irresistible. Sophia froze, looking at him. Hey, can you hear me? Eric touched her shoulder. The girl took her eyes off Jacob and turned around. Come on, I'll tell you everything here, show you. I can feel it. The boss decided to check how I work, Eric said and led the girl backstage. The kitchen was very clean. There were two men, about 40 years old. The smell of fresh-baked goods was very good. Sophia looked at the cook's work table. They were molding something delicious with cinnamon dough. I wanted to taste it. I was drooling, if you'll excuse me. What are you guys cooking? she asked, passing by the cooks. They smiled and replied that it was all on bonus. Sophia loved them. But in her family, they were rarely cooked. Actually, she was the only one who knew how to make them. But she almost always had no time to do it. Sophia kept up, shouted Eric. He had already gone a decent distance. The kitchen was indeed very spacious, and at the end of it they could see some kind of white door. That's where he and Eric were going. The guy opened that door and pointed to a whole pile of dishes that clearly needed to be washed. And that was probably her responsibility. She'd been put on probation for a reason. Gotta make fun of her. Anyway, I'm sorry to say this, Eric began. But you'll have to clean it all up, and you'll have limited time. An hour, Sophia exclaimed. She had expected everything, but not such a paltry amount of time. Yes, and then I'll show you the work in the hall. Get used to it. You'll often have to sweat a lot here, but it's worth it. Jacob very often gives bonuses to those who have done well in the past month. I can see he's a very good and generous man. But I don't know about the other one. He rarely visits us really. His second appearance in 2 days really scares me. He's never come here just to eat. He must be very hungry, Sophia tried to joke. But Eric didn't appreciate the joke. He just smiled and walked out, leaving the girl alone with a mountain of dishes to go through in an hour. Time was running out, so Sophia got down to business immediately. She decided it would be quicker to pour all the dishes out for us at the beginning, and then lament her method. It really worked, and Sophia got the job done. Even in less than an hour, she shook her hands and looked at the job done. All that dirty mountain had turned into another mountain of white, shining dishes. Sophia stepped out into the hall. Eric was working the dispensing desk and taking orders. It was a full house today. People were even standing in a small line to try some new cakes. When all the customers got their orders, Sophia finally managed to distract the guy. I'm done with the dishes. Friendly, she remarked. Eric smiled as well. However, that smile was more strained than genuine. He was probably tired as hell. The scoreboard was showing over 100 customers, and it was only 9 o'clock at night. And the guys had only been working here for 4 hours. Why are there so many people here tonight? Sophia asked, helping the guy wipe glasses. We launched a promotion, or rather buns on promotion. A unique flavor, which is not available in any cafe. You get one, you get a second one for free, so people are coming. In fact, it has a very good effect on our income, and the tips go up. But you're awfully tired. It's my job. You'll soon realize it's not that simple. Just because you've done the dishes doesn't mean you've done everything. There are worse things. For example, I hope you don't throw up right here, Eric sighed. Well, there are different people in the world. Some are more adequate, some less so. But once I had to scrub the whole toilet because someone decided to smear his waste, so to speak, all over the walls and floor. They were even on the mirror. I still remember it like a bad dream. Oh my God, Eric, what kind of bullying is this? It's customer service. Let's get to know each other. You've got a lot to learn. But I can tell you one thing for sure, our boss is very interested in you. What makes you think that? Sophia asked, perplexed. And the guy, instead of answering, just looked at the man sitting at the table against the wall. It was the boss again. He was looking directly at her without taking his eyes off her. Sophia was horribly embarrassed by this, and she tried to avert her gaze as quickly as possible. Oh my God, she said. Eric only smiled wryly and continued drying the glasses with a towel. By the end of her shift, Sophia was completely exhausted. She served tables, washed dishes, made sure the kitchen was clean. In general, she had enough to do. Eric had left an hour ago and left her the keys to the coffee shop. She needed to finish up, wash the dishes, and pick up all the chairs. As she was picking up the last chair, someone came up behind her. She was very frightened and turned around and slapped the stranger on the cheek. Only it wasn't a stranger at all. It was Jacob again, and he seemed shocked at this reaction. I knew, of course, that my heavy breathing against his back could be a turn-on sometimes. But why hit me? The boss said offensively. The girl stood in shock, covering her mouth with her hand. She was terribly embarrassed. He would definitely fire her right now. She hadn't even passed a day of probation. Hitting her boss. That's a hell of a thing to do. Jacob, please, I'm sorry. Sophia cried out, trying to see how hard the blow was. She touched his cheek, and he let out an involuntary painful groan. Please. I'm sorry, I thought you were muggers or worse. Who, for example, asked it even playfully and sleepily involuntarily embarrassed by such a question? Why specify? It's already clear. Well, rapist, murderer, she muttered to herself under her nose eye. I will now run for ice. She turned around in a minute and immediately put cold ice cubes to Jacob's cheek. Please excuse me. Yes, I apologize, Sophia. The guy grinned. Just so I can really forgive you. You'll have to fulfill my wish. Sophia's head was full of dirty thoughts, but she tried to put them aside. The guy seemed to understand what she was thinking. No, Sophia said seriously. I won't ask you what you thought I was thinking. What was I thinking? Trying to play dumb. Sophia, I want to give you a ride home. Do you mind tonight? Right away. Sophia, after a moment's thought, replied, Guess, okay. But you should know that I don't live close by. What do you take the bus for? Sophia packed her things. Finally, they left the coffee shop. The girl closed it safely and followed Jacob. When she saw the car, she stood like a dumbfounded. It was a very real Mercedes, up to the kind that few people in this town had. She was very embarrassed to get into this expensive car, but she overpowered herself. She gave her address, and they drove off. There is no other word for such a ride to the destination. How was your first day on the job? The supervisor asked. Pretty productive. I managed to eat a couple of buns, and my boss is giving me a ride home, Sophia joked. I was watching you today. Probation's a probationary period after all. You were very kind and understanding. In a way. You gave a clearly needy grandmother who came for leftovers not one pie, as she asked, but two. And you added salad and fried potatoes. And then Sophia felt very ashamed. She had ruined everything again. The girl was sure that no one was watching her at that moment. I'm sorry, please, it won't happen again. Guiltily, Sophia said. Jacob laughed. I'm not judging you, I'm praising you. Do I feel sorry for the leftovers? Yes, we often have untouched, and buns often go to waste, and we throw them on the garbage dump. Where do the birds finish them? And you've done such a good deed. You know, you even gave me an idea. Now I'm thinking about the idea of giving leftover buns to the poor. It raises our ratings in the eyes of the public, and the produce wouldn't go to waste. What do you think? I think it's a great idea. Rejoicing in her heart, Sophia agreed. She was even more convinced that her boss had a very kind soul. He was even willing to give food to the poor. They drove in silence for 5 minutes, but then something unexpected happened. Stop the car now, Sophia screamed. Jacob swerved to the right and jerked on the brakes. They stopped right on the roadway near the curb. Sophia ran out of the car and ran toward the couple. They were obviously a little tipsy, or maybe a lot behind her. Sophia yelled across the street as they ran closer. Hey, take it easy. What are you doing? Replied the tipsy guy. He did not let go of his victim, which turned out to be Alice. And she was drunk, too. In the smoke just stood swaying and indifferently stared at the unfolding situation. I said let her go quickly or I'd call the police. Jacob came to the rescue. He got out of the car and approached their motley company. So what's going on here? He asked angrily. Jacob confused everyone. Please talk some sense into this guy. He's taking my sister to the wrong place. Don't you see? She's in no condition to make rational decisions. Sophia prayed. Hey, buddy, let your girlfriend go and go on your way, said Jacob, addressing a strange drunk guy in his early 20s. I'm not letting her go. She said yes. You'll pick her up tomorrow. Tonight we're going to keep having fun. Alice smirked at the guy. Yeah, Alice was smiling. She was obviously high. Her eyes were just glowing with artificial happiness. A happiness that seemed to be hers alone. She's out of her mind. Sophia screamed in horror, looking at Jacob and begging him with her eyes for help. Okay, gentlemen, I'm calling the police, said Sophia's superior. Call them. What's the big deal? We're just having fun. There's nothing illegal about it. This person is a minor. Jacob's got a drunken boyfriend. Be nice, let her go nicely. Find another fool. The drunk wouldn't give up. You'd think you'd seen her passport. She said she was 18. No one pulled her tongue, so she is. Anyway, I don't care, my dear squinted. Jacob, since you're so advanced, you probably know that in our reality, it's a simple matter to put a man in jail for anything. And then the police will figure out if you're right or wrong. So what if it takes a while? 8 years behind bars isn't such a long time, don't you think? So if you're really sure, you have nothing to fear from going anywhere with her. In the meantime, I'll make one little call. The guy hesitated immediately. Fear was easily read in his eyes. A common coward, a neighborhood. No big deal. All the fervor faded immediately. He quickly let go of Alice and ran away. Or rather, the alcohol tried to get away. What else were they using? He's really under the influence, and he can barely waddle. Alice, on the other hand, let out a dejected groan. Ruining all the fun, she cried, smearing makeup all over her face as she was ushered into the car. You're not yourself. Shut up, replied Sophia. Alice was placed in the passenger seat in the back and had her seatbelt fastened for reassurance. Sophia sat in the front next to Jacob. Sis, where did you get such a nice car? A drunken Alice asked. Sophia ignored her antics and words. It's your boyfriend. Alice didn't get tired of Alice, who was cute and has money. How long have you two been together? He's the one who gave you that car. It took a long time to work out my sister. And she got drunk and nasty and laughed. As soon as they got to the house, Alice was pulled out of the car. She stood up, staggered, and after a moment moved into the nearest bushes. Sophia was ready to burn with shame for her relative. Thank you. Sophia thanked her boss embarrassedly. You're welcome. Sophia, after this busy evening, let's switch to the first name. Because I'm getting awkward, answered Jacob with a laugh. Yes, okay. Laughing in response, the girl came into the light of God. Finally crawled out of the bushes drunk Alice. So it was clear that it was time to end the dialogue. Thank you so much. Oh, I mean you for your help. I'll see you later. While smiling cheerfully, the guy said goodbye. He walked briskly to his car. One could even assume he was drunk too. But he was just happy and nothing more. So come on in, supervised Sophia Alice as they entered the apartment only quietly. Please. After saying those words, Alice immediately dropped something. It was very loud. So Sophia was already making 1,000 excuses for this situation in her head. But no one even went to the hallway. Everyone was sound asleep. Peter, as usual, was sleeping on the sofa in the living room with the TV on in front of him. Sophia carefully turned off the TV, even though her uncle didn't deserve it. But then again, it wasn't like he had done anything wrong to her either. She led Alice into the room and put her to bed. Then she changed into her pajamas and kept saying that she felt sick. So Sophia envisioned this option as well and put the basin right in front of her bed. Finally, everything was done and Sophia could go to sleep, and only she closed her eyes, as she heard pitifully and whispered Sonia. Sleep, quietly asked Alice. Sophia didn't answer anything. She didn't want to deal with this drunk anymore, just wanted to sleep. Today had been a terribly hard day, and it had been a crazy night. Sophia kept whispering to Alice. And then Sophia couldn't take it anymore and finally answered, Why are you easy with me, please? I'm scared. Sophia sighed. She walked over to her bed and lay on her side. The plan was that she would lie with her sister for a while and she would fall asleep. Then Sophia could safely go back to her bed and sleep for the remaining hours of the morning. Sophia, why did you help me? Alice asked unexpectedly. Because you're my sister, Sophia answered almost automatically. You could have left me there. I don't deserve help. Everyone deserves help. Alice. I don't know what would have happened to you if I hadn't shown up on that road and where you've been all day. I mean, you left last night. Well, me and the girls went to a club where we met some guys. I went with Jenna and 2 guys to their place. Maria left with some other dude. We were really drunk, so no one remembered her after about 10 minutes. Anyway, we just hung out at their apartment, listening to music, drinking. Jenna locked herself in a room with one of them. It was getting late in the morning, and I was so sleepy. My head was splitting open. I ended up falling asleep. I slept until 3 p.m. Then one of the guys woke me up, like the one who spent the night with Jenna. She'd already left and didn't even bother to call me, and I had a terrible hangover. So he let me stay there until tonight. I passed out again, and then his friend came over. The same friend we've been hanging out with. And well, we went to that club again at night. And then I don't remember much, but my head hurt like hell now, and I'm starting to feel ashamed. You saved me from God knows where that fucking dude was taking me. I'm glad you're home. Alice is safe. I hope you'll listen to me once in a while. Sophia never expected this favorable outcome. Getting along with her cousin seemed impossible. And yet it happened literally in one evening. The morning was quite ordinary, as it should always be. Sophia stroked the cat for a long time. Veja put it on her lap. While she ate her oatmeal, she then leisurely dressed and surprisingly felt fine. Though she estimated she had slept less than 4 hours and was still remembering the conversation with Alice. Things were finally working out for them. Sophia looked into the bedroom once more. Her sister was asleep. Sophia decided not to disturb her and only left the headache pills on the table and a glass of water. Her head would definitely be spinning after yesterday. Sophia was very surprised that her aunt and uncle were not home. They went out 2 hours later than her, and now it was only 3 p.m. Sophia almost fell over in shock. She looked at her watch on her phone. It was showing 7 o'clock. She had gotten up at 6, but after looking at all the clocks in the house, the girl was convinced that her cell phone had also hit something in her head. She had overslept, and not just overslept. It was already lunchtime. Uncles, aunts, and uncles were due back soon. And what would they find when they came in? How their daughter had drunkenly lain around until 3 p.m. and was suffering from a hangover. Sophia ran to the bedroom and started to wake her sister. She didn't respond. She must have been tired for 2 days. "Alice, please get up," Sophia shouted. Finally, the sister began to show signs of life. She slowly opened one eye and immediately squeezed it shut from the bright light. Wu tangled herself in the blanket with her head and wanted to continue sleeping, but Sophia wouldn't let her. "Alice, get up. Otherwise you will live on the street." Sophia kept shouting. "What street? My mother doesn't care." Alice moaned, reluctant to get up. "And you don't care about me either. It'll be my fault. We've been through this before. Don't set me up, please." But the sister continued to lie there. She rolled back to her knees and soon heard the sound of keys turning in the keyhole. They had come in. Sophia sat down on a chair beside Alice's bed and stared at her. At that moment, Aunt Kelly entered the room in her horribly tattered coat. "What is going on here?" "In a daze?" she asked. She was clearly not in the best of moods. She worked at the grocery store and often came in terribly tired. The world was full of inadequate people, and all those people wanted to eat and came to her store. At times, Sophia even felt sorry for her aunt. But then she remembered how unfair and cruel she was to her husband and to her, and her opinion remained the same. Sophia hated her, but there was no way to move out either. Even with a job, renting an apartment seemed impossible. Often as a child, Sophia spent her evenings in the entryway, as she was kicked out of the apartment for every misdemeanor. It was the kind of upbringing they justified it now. But sometimes she was kicked out of the entrance, and she would walk around the city at night like that, even in the bitter cold. And in this northern seaside town, they really were terrible. Now Sophia did not want to repeat such a sad experience of her biography, because she was already 19, which meant that they could not provide her with housing for a long time. Aunt Kelly knew the law well. How did she always brag? Especially the obvious ones. Yeah, Alice was sick. Sophia lied, stroking her sister. She didn't say a word, and rightly so. Did she have a cold or something? Aunt Kelly couldn't believe it. "I'm not sick," screamed Alice. "I have a headache." Her mother touched her forehead. It didn't feel hot, and then it was like a brick hit her. "But the breath is on me." Alice didn't even try to resist. Sophia, on the other hand, couldn't accept the fact that she was going to die. "You smell like an alcoholic." Kelly was indignant. Then she looked at Sophia. "Haven't you been keeping an eye on your sister? I came to you about it yesterday, Sunday. You said you did. What did you say?" "That you were interrupted by Aunt Kelly in a rage. She's leaving the house because you're a pain in the ass." Sophia was taken aback by the remark. It wasn't so much unfair as it was horrifyingly stupid. It was impossible to even argue with it. It was simply humiliating. So, in order not to participate in the circus, she decided to just leave. "I thought you and I were finally friends," she said one last time. The girl's eyes filled with fear and shame. Sophia left the house and merged through the streets of the city. She didn't know whether to be sad or angry, or just to forget about the whole situation. She didn't care what was waiting for her tomorrow. She opened her phone. 10 missed calls from Kate, her good friend, from high school, 2 from her supervisor at the university, and 1 from Alice. The last one upset her the most. How could she do this? After everything Sophia had done for her, saved her from that check on that guy, helped at night, even left her pills in the morning. It seemed so nonsensical now. Sophia felt used. She wanted to cry. So she did. "I sat down on some swings and burst into tears. It started to freeze with a nasty rain, but the girl didn't go anywhere. It seemed that the rain, on the contrary, helped her to cope with difficulties. In such freshness, she thought better. The soft, moist air gave her strength. She didn't know how much time had passed. She didn't care about anything, but her thoughts were interrupted by an interesting call from an unknown number. "Hello," Sophia answered indifferently. Silence. No one answered. She wanted to drop the call, but finally she heard Sophia's voice. "Are you all right?" asked Jacob. Yes, but the girl was surprised. She looked at the screen of the phone. Her shift at the cafe had started an hour ago. Today she was losing everywhere on all fronts. "Why aren't you here?" Concerned? Her boyfriend asked her. "I'm just," and the emotions came in a river again. Only this time they were even more. It was all the unrelenting pain from all those years. She was so tired. She'd been through too much hardship in her 19 years. First, the death of her parents, then the long and hopeless years of living with indifferent and even cruel relatives. Universal injustice. The guy seemed to hear those sobs and understood everything. "Where are you now?" Just and asked him in the park, in that damn park. And the memories came back with renewed vigor. This was where she had spent her entire childhood until her parents died. This was the swing she'd been rocked on, and this was the slide she'd ridden on. "Run, run here," my girl shouted her mother, smiling. Sophia ran to her mother's arms. She was still not walking well, but she tried to take every step. "That's right, let's go to Daddy's. He made pizza," my mother exclaimed happily. Sophia smiled back. These days were so bright, full of happiness. "Sonny will be here soon. Don't be naughty. Please. You're a big girl now," said Mom, adjusting the sick girl's scarf. Mom sat in the front seat and Sophia in the back. She had a very high fever, and they were on their way to the hospital. "Let us." But Mom didn't have time to say anything. The car crashed into the pole at such a tremendous speed that the parents were killed instantly. The girl suffered multiple injuries. When she was taken to the hospital, the doctors couldn't understand how she could have survived. The pillar so crumpled the car that there was only a tiny piece of space left, and in that space was a little girl. She was operated on for hours. She was in a cast for another year. Her relatives weren't found right away, and poor Sophia lived for a couple of months in an orphanage. But even then, the hell didn't end. When her aunt and uncle took her in, she was able to realize what it was like to be unwanted. In what park did Sophia bring her out of her thoughts? The voice from the phone? The girl didn't answer for what seemed like a full minute. "Memory Alley," she answered. "Sit there and don't go anywhere," the guy muttered and hung up, and Sophia was alone with her thoughts again. She had grown up to be a strong person. The hardships had hardened her, but sometimes she just ran out of internal battery. And then she just wanted to be a happy kid like the ones she met on the streets of the city. The same fun-loving teenager roaming the night city with her company. She had become an adult too quickly, and very often that loneliness just wished her from the inside out. At a transitional age, she even considered suicide. None of her classmates or teachers had any idea about it. Of course, not to mention the family she grew up in. Nobody cared about her. She'd always been a good girl and got straight A's. But would they know how hard those grades were for her? How hard she had to get up every day at 6 o'clock a.m. too? To be the best, so that everyone would be proud of her mother and father. So that one day they would say, "Ah, what kind of child did they raise?" She wanted to thank them for the precious and unfortunately short time they had with her. Did you hear a voice from behind? She seemed to have disconnected from the world for a long time again. The girl turned around. Jacob stood in front of her. He invited her to sit on the bench that was opposite the swing. I sobbed so terribly, Sophia. The tears flowed again and again. This circle is endless. Jacob moved closer to her and hugged her as tightly as one hugs the most dear person. Why is the world so cruel? Why are people so evil? There is not a drop of humanity and compassion in them. Sophia cried. You're wrong. Not all people are like that, Sophia, not all. There are light people, and they outnumber the bad ones. You just haven't met them yet. Everything in my life is going wrong. Why should I suffer so much? But sometimes to grow a strong man, you have to give him the right soil. Jacob got a look full of condemnation and disapproval. Sophia's tantrum immediately stopped. She just looked at him indignantly. Well, I mean, strong people should. Jacob began to justify himself, because he was embarrassed by that angry look of his interlocutor. Yes, I understand. Do not continue firmly and indifferently, she interrupted him. I don't understand why you say that to me. I'm pouring my heart out to you. Did I ask to be made strong? I just wanted a happy childhood like everyone else. I wanted Barbie toys. I wanted games with my friends. I wanted home, pies on Sundays. Mommy's caring hands. Nothing special, just a normal, loving family. And what did I get? Just anger and judgment in the eyes of others. We don't have the money for your whims. You should be thankful we took you in, shouldn't you? I understand. I'm sorry. I'm a bad friend. Now, Sophia's starting to feel sorry for him. She's no different from the people who hurt her, just as cruel and insolent. She felt ashamed of her words. Jacob just wanted to support her. I'm sorry, I'm just emotional, I know. That's no excuse. What's your problem? Careful, asked the guy me. I got kicked out of the house, or rather, no, I left. I was sick of the people I see every day. Alice, that's your sister. So I thought you two had a good relationship. You were so worried about her. I thought I did too. But she turned out to be nothing more than a common traitor. I'm so sorry. There was a long silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves. The rain had long since stopped, and so had the girl's hysterics. It was as if the weather depended on her mood. It was overcast now. It had been dark outside for a long time. The lanterns were burning brightly, illuminating this gloomy alley. The cold was creeping through her clothes, and it felt like it had gotten into her heart. Sophia began to involuntarily grit her teeth. Are you cold? Yes, Sophia stretched out. She was no longer hiding what she was feeling. Come on, I'll take you to a cafe, Jacob suggested. The girl did not refuse. They got into his car and drove off at full speed. To that cafe she already knew. What are we gonna do? Asked the guy after he made the order. They asked Eric for 2 croissants and 2 mugs of cocoa. He looked at them strangely, but didn't say anything. Sophia guessed what he was thinking. They looked like a real couple. She didn't try to prove otherwise, but smiled and went to the table. What do you mean? The girl asked. You've been kicked out of your house. You have nowhere to live. What are you going to do? Well, I think I'll stay with a friend for the first time, and then I'll earn some money and rent a room in some hostel. No hostel. Jacob rejected the idea right away. I realize that I may be imposing my society, but I'm ready to help you with housing. I have a large apartment in the center. I live there alone. However, rooms on the whole floor, choose any and move in. The girl thought it was a good offer. However, the price may not be. And this guy was clearly hinting at something. How much do you want? Asked Sophia. It will be enough for me that you go to work in my coffee shop. No, it doesn't work that way, the girl cut him off. The boy turned away, as if he was offended. However, after a couple seconds of thought, he turned around again. All right. You know, nowadays there is a tendency for people living in the same apartment to do things for each other. Since it's my apartment and you want to live in it, you have to make me breakfast and lunch. That is, what will be before your shift. Here is a proposal to live in the apartment of your boss. Sophia is thinking, I'm your friend. We've only known each other for a couple days, but in those couple days I've already driven you home on my way to pick up your drunk sister. Listen to all your heart itches, and now I'm trying to calm you down here at the coffee shop where you're on probation, by the way. Sophia smiled at these arguments. And it was all true, wasn't it? Let me think about it for a while. I'll stay at my friend's place for the time being, the girl finally answered. Okay, but my offer won't last forever. One day you will come, and the door of my apartment will be closed for you, Jacob said grimly. But then laughed, oh my God, you should have seen your face. What are you like? But Sophia did not allow herself to be insulted by her boss, no matter how good and funny he was. He was and still is her boss. Finally, Eric brought them croissants and joked too. Croissants straight from France for two lovers. Eric, Sophia shouted indignantly after him, unable to overcome the smile on her face. This guy knows how to tease. We're getting to the point where we're all coming together, Jacob remarked. You're old to me. What are you, 25? How dare you say I'm old? Naively indignant guy, and smeared the girl's lip with cream from the croissant. Toss soiled him in return. Like two children, they began to play merrily with their food. Laughter spread throughout the coffee shop, along with the aroma of chicken. Then they calmed down. Sophia dared to ask a risky question. But seriously, how did you get to this point in your 25s? To have a Mercedes and a coffee shop. Ordinary income is definitely not enough. I just worked with my brain, Jacob said, eating a croissant. In a way, I've been saving money since I was a kid. And even then, I started small businesses, selling apples or cookies. And as an adult, the stakes got higher, but the money got bigger. Well, that deserves respect, summarized the girl, twirling a mug of cocoa in front of her eyes. Listen, it's getting late. Let me drive you to your friend's house. In order to come to her, you have to warn her first. Sophia laughed and took out her cell phone. She dialed Kate's number. It beeped. Yes, Kate's melodious voice answered. Hi. Sophia said hello. Here's the deal. Anyway, I'd like to spend the night. What's up? Kelly did something again, and not just Kelly. Okay, you'll tell me everything. You're welcome to come over. You don't have my keys. I left them at home. I'm not going back there, you know? Well, you knew you'd come running to me. All right, I'm finishing rehearsal, and you'll be eating in an hour. It's at the coffee shop now. Oh, you're talking in riddles. Well, walk to my house. I think I'll be there by then. Thank you. Sophia said thank you and hung up. She looked at Jacob with joy in her eyes. He was waiting for a suggestion, a request, an idea, any word. Well, what can I say? The guy couldn't take it anymore. She said she could sleep over, but she won't be home for another hour. It's a 20-minute drive from here, and it's an hour on foot. So I can walk you home. Why are you being such a schoolboy? Sure, that's what I'm saying. And Jacob and Sophia walked down the dark alleys of their town. They discussed the weather, animal work, anything that didn't concern their personal lives. Jacob realized that Sophia needed to take her mind off of it. On the way, they met a strange man who was showing tricks, and who in the middle of the day would want to show tricks on the street. But there are inadequates in the world. They watched for a while, pulling out the endless rope, jumping deck of cards, and other funny nonsense. Jacob shoved a magician some kind of bill in his hands. After looking at it, he rounded his eyes and made a theatrical bow. He quickly collected all his props and left. Finally, they reached Kate's house. They got there 10 minutes earlier than they'd expected. Well, I think it's time to say goodbye here, Sophia declared, looking straight into Jacob's eyes. It was nice spending time with you. Look, I know you're not up to it right now, but you wouldn't want to see me again. I'm sorry. Take a walk with me, maybe on the waterfront. It's such a beautiful view sometimes. I know you've lived here all your life, but still, maybe I can show you something you've never seen." "Well, we'll see," Sophia replied hesitantly. Jacob seemed to be in a hurry. Jacob nodded sternly, smiled, and walked back on foot because his car was left at the coffee shop. The poor guy will now walk an hour and more to this place. He'll get a cab. He had money to spare. Sophia thought so and was about to sit down on the bench waiting for her friend. But then she jumped out of the bushes like a tigress from the ambush and slowly and cunningly smiling in a full face approached her friend in circles. "Well, who was it? And how long have you been together?" Kate literally poured Sophia with questions. Sophia looked at her with an indignant face, but immediately she burst out laughing. "That's just my boss." The girl laughed. "Wow, my friend didn't know you were such a hothead. I thought you were a shy gray mouse, and here's the boss. Keep your dirty fantasies to yourself." And the mouse thing was kind of offensive. "But really," laughed Kate, walking up to the entrance and pressing the code. Sophia was still pouting her lips. She was hurt that her best friend thought she was a gray mouse, even though in many ways she was right. Yes, even compared to her, the beautiful and bright girl is studying at the theater and already has some small roles. Finally, they entered the apartment. There was a mouse hanging in the refrigerator, as usual. There was nothing to eat. Kate never cooked at home. That's why there was always no food. Often she slept in the theater because the next morning there were rehearsals. It was a long way from the theater to the house. They sat down in the kitchen and drank tea and cookies. "Well, tell me why." "How, when? Why?" Kate began, taking another sip. It was the usual. Only this time they didn't kick me out. I left home on my own. And Sophia told the whole story from start to finish. He didn't forget to mention Jacob, who now looked like a hero in Kate's eyes. "When are you getting married to him?" Kate asked after an hour of conversation. "Kate?" Sophia was indignant. But at the same time she laughed. "Why did you paint him in such colors? It's not my fault. I didn't see him in the dark, but I think he's as beautiful as God." Sophia thought for a moment and then answered honestly, "He's handsome and smart. He has all the qualities of a perfect man and partner. But something still alarms me, something that makes me not to cross over. That line of ordinary friendship." The girls went to bed all night. Sophia couldn't sleep properly. She kept having nightmares. She woke up almost every hour, Aunt Kelly saying horrible things, Jacob killing her at work. Was it a completely nonsensical delusion or not? In the morning, Sophia decided to take her temperature. And her hunch was confirmed. The temperature was very high. Kate was doing something in the kitchen. Sophia wanted to call out to her, but her voice was gone too. She shouldn't have gone out in that cold yesterday in a thin, unlined coat. She didn't bring anything warm from home. She basically didn't take anything at all. Finally, Kate came into the room and saw her friend showing her the thermometer. She walked over and looked at the board. 38.7. Sophia only shrugged her shoulders. She had no voice at all. At first she tried to make some sounds, but it was singing. "No one would ever understand. Don't you dare charge me. I've got a gig in a month," Kate declared. "I'll get you some medicine and tea. Stay home and heal. Don't go anywhere." Sophia followed her friend's instructions. She switched on the TV series and took the tea and medicine every hour. The temperature was brought down, but she felt terrible. Suddenly, she remembered about work. It was already the second day that she did not report there, although it was her probationary period. The girl decided to notify Jacob urgently. When she went to her phone, she saw 3 missed ones from Eric. And where did he get her phone from? However, she only texted Jacob, "Hi. I'm writing to warn you that I won't be in. I understand the probationary period thing, but I'm sick." It took 2 seconds to text back. "Oh my God. There's a fever, a cough, a sore throat. You don't have to worry so much. It's just a cold." After a few more seconds, the phone rang. Sophia answered the call. But in response to Jacob's agitated questions, she could only squeeze out a hoarse hiss, breaking down into a horrible cough. "You cannot answer, worried interlocutor. Write me urgently. Where are you still at Kate's?" Yes, Sophia said faintly. He hung up immediately. Sophia couldn't believe it. Just now he was worrying about her like she had a terminal infection. And then he just hung up on her. What kind of man is that? But it soon became clear why he'd done that. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The girl reluctantly got up and crept to the door to see who it brought. I looked through the peephole and gasped. Jacob stood there in his usual classic black suit and tie, but with flowers and a basket of fruit and sweets. She hurriedly opened the door for him. It wasn't a trick of the eye. The guy standing at the threshold really turned out to be her boss and had brought such fancy goodies. Sophia shunned with a gesture, inviting the guy into the apartment. If even she could speak, she still wouldn't be able to give out anything at the moment out of amazement. Jacob, with a hostess look, walked into the tiny kitchen, put on the kettle, and pulled out a basket of some bags. Here, he said triumphantly, "Now you drink this, and you will feel much better." The warmth enveloped the drink with the aroma of berries, honey, and some herbs. It is nice to warm Sophia on a sore throat. A few minutes after absorbing the drink, she, to her surprise, was able to speak almost normally. "Listen, do you have such talents for a doctor?" She joked to hide her embarrassment. "And you are so caring. A girl would be happy to be your wife, though I doubt you need a wife. Really, maybe I do. And that's why I care so much about my future bride," Jacob replied with a hint. He set a basket of all sorts of tasty treats on the nightstand, and on the bed he dumped a whole bag of medicine, so it was for his throat. He pointed to the packaging. "This is for a runny nose. And this is to make you feel normal. And this?" The girl grinned, pointing at the beautiful flowers that he brought and carefully placed in a vase neatly, and a small bouquet of the freshest roses. "And what was all this for?" Sophia looked at Jacob, who seemed embarrassed and wanted to say something. "But how did you get Kate's apartment number?" The girl began to suspect something wrong. The guy smiled. She had clearly figured him out. However, contrary to all expectations, he didn't crack and answered, "I ran it through the database." "There are connections. Lie more. Why did you have to come here?" "You called? I just wanted to help. Is that so bad?" He timidly, almost theatrically, looked at the girl with a guilty look, but she did not hide her disapproval. Then Jacob decided to confess. "Okay, I called Kate. I confess. I memorized the number while you were calling her from the cafe yesterday. I have a very good visual memory. But she also said you were very sick and was happy to give me your address." The guy also paused briefly. "She also told me to take you with me because she doesn't want you to get her sick before an important performance." Sophia shook her head. "That's what she's like. And she's also called a friend." "Pack your things. We're leaving," Jacob announced, dropping the important executive look. Why did Sophia continue to resent him? "Why should I go with you? You promised yesterday to think about the proposal, and today you are sick. Let's take care of your friend's health together. She really shouldn't be sick right now." The girl didn't agree right away. She thought about it for a long time, whether it was worth leaving her friend, but eventually decided to leave her colleague. Kate even now did not need a man who could not take care of himself, and Jacob had a large apartment. She wouldn't be much in his way there, and though it was hard to admit it, he would actually be able to take care of her if something terrible happened. It was so nice to feel needed, to feel cared for. For the last 10 years, if Sophia got sick and had to be treated by herself, indifferent relatives didn't even bother to bring her tea. Not that to buy medicine. They called a doctor at home to look like a doctor. The girl herself opened the door to him because everyone was at work, and the old grandmother was always sick and could not take care of a sick child. The doctor examined her, wrote a prescription, and gave her instructions. "Please, you write me something inexpensive." Embarrassed, she asked the doctor, "We don't have much money." When she left, the district doctor, who knew all his patients and had become accustomed over the years to the way things were in this family, left her some cheap aspirin and paracetamol tablets, something for throat strips from the meager supplies the clinic had provided. And Sophia dissolved herself to make tea with raspberries, and then also listened to reproaches. "Why did you open that jar? Who authorized it?" At 14, she accidentally learned from an employee of the Social Security office that she, it turns out, had been receiving survivor's benefit all this time. That's her, not her aunt or uncle. They were only her guardians, who were obliged to take proper care of her. Humbly, Sophia had caused quite a scandal at home. And since then, the aunt had somewhat moderated her angry outbursts, fearing that the girl would complain. But of course, any kindred love was never out of the question. The apartment Jacob had brought her to was indeed everything he had described. There were 5 or 6 rooms, a huge living room, a kitchen, a dining room almost as big as a cafe, a full-wall plasma. He obviously wasn't poor. The guy showed Sophia to her room, and she immediately flopped onto the warm, soft bed. Everything here was like a hotel, even the servants coming in. After half an hour, Jacob suggested watching a movie, and he prepared delicious cocktails. They had a good time, and by the next day, there was no trace left of the cold. 2 weeks passed. Sophia's probationary period was finally over, and she was able to go to work. Very quickly, Sophia understood at how things worked and was receiving rave reviews from visitors. She continued to live with Jacob and fulfill his only condition: breakfast, lunch, cleaning up after cooking. When there was strength left, she even made dinner. The guy treated her very kindly, helped her with her studies. Together with her, watched her favorite TV series. They lived as the most real friends. Kate, of course, had already married them and her incessantly. But for that, she was an emotional and passionate actress. She certainly had a very well-developed fantasy, although maybe it wasn't a fantasy at all. Everyone noticed some kind of connection between Jacob and Sophia, but they themselves ignored the attention. Sophia ignored it. No one could say anything to Jacob in his eyes, of course. She also managed, living in his apartment, to skillfully avoid his advances and evade all the signs of attention that he constantly gave her. She didn't care about relationships right now, especially not with her boss. She wanted to earn enough money and go to St. Petersburg. Sophia dreamed of becoming a designer, and this city, as it seemed to her, was ideal for such a creative profession. Kate shared her dream. Such a creative nature needed to walk the streets of the world's most aesthetic city, not a cold one. About New York to Murmansk. Listen, Jacob began one day, looking into Sophia's room. You can come to the cafe tonight at 7 o'clock. Sophia was reading a boring textbook and was very surprised and at the same time intrigued by this proposal. After all, today was her day off. Why? Eric has some problems and he won't show up for work today, and there is no one else to replace him. You'll get a nice bonus. The guy cheered her up, and when I asked him to, he didn't replace me. Why should I help him? Because I'll fire you, Jacob threatened. A joke, of course. However, his look was very determined and serious. Sophia was very angry, but there was nothing to do. She didn't want to peel on her jacket, put on her boots, and swore at the bus. And after all, it had been raining outside all day and there were puddles in the icy wind. They looked more like oceans. But Sophia has always been a prudent girl, so she didn't put on my shoes directly. When she arrived at the establishment, no one was there. No lights were on the sign said closed. Sophia sings from the cold as she looked around the building. If this was a joke, it wasn't funny at all. After all, she might get sick again. Already she was angry with Jacob. She was falling on people not in her hands. They were always so cold in hers, even with warm gloves. This is the one she called out into the void. But on the street, only a lonely lantern was burning from the last leaves. Icy raindrops fell to the ground. But just disgusting weather. In such weather, it is better to sit at home under a warm blanket, watch a TV series, or read a good book, rather than stand at the entrance to a closed coffee shop and wait for something unknown. The girl stood like that for about 10 minutes, even knocked on the door. And then she realized that it was a pointless waste of time. She was about to leave angry and upset. Suddenly, she heard a click. Turning around, sleepily, she noticed that the lights in the coffee shop were on, but not fully. It was on only at the cash register, and the entire room was in darkness. But what startled her the most was the back door that opened, which overlooked a staff yard. Only employees of any kind who were adequate and had any sense of self-preservation were allowed in there. People would have run as far away from here as possible, but not Sophia. She was completely consumed with interest. She was so intrigued by this strange chain of events that she decided to go with the scenario of whoever had planned it. She slowly approached the door. The corridor that led to the kitchen was completely dark, but after a couple seconds, the light came on there too. Going there was a little exciting and scary. What if a maniac was waiting for her there? But she did not know why she decided to take such a risk. Sophia went through the whole corridor and came to the kitchen, which was immersed in darkness. The girl even swore to herself, how many times can it be? This darkness and mystery. She was already sick of it. Finally, the light came on. The bulb shone exclusively on a round table covered with a white tablecloth. At the table sat a dark figure. The girl could not see the face. The man had his back turned to her. Sophia was a little afraid, but somehow she understood what was expected of her. She decided to take a seat at the table and observe what would happen next. The man's face was still in shadow, but now the girl could get a better look at what was on the table. A bottle of red wine on ice, 2 glasses, and 2 plates. It looked like a date. "It's good to see you." Sophia, in an enchanting voice, said Jacob, turning to face her and smiling affectionately. After his words, candles were lit everywhere and music played. It was like some kind of magic. Now the girl saw red rose petals on the table. And at this moment he took out from somewhere, quite like that street magician, pulled out of his pocket different things. A huge bouquet of red roses. Sophia even gasped in surprise. "Why did you have to go to all that trouble?" Sophia asked, smiling. Of course she liked this pleasant surprise. No one had ever done anything like this before. It was a complete surprise for her. But on the other hand, she was completely unprepared for the first romantic creation in her life of an ugly dress, no hair or even makeup, let alone manicure and expensive accessories. Just a bundle quickly gathered from her unruly drinking hair. Yes, pink lip gloss, so she wouldn't be oohed and awed about Sophia. This wasn't how Sophia had envisioned her first date. "Was there something you didn't like?" Jacob asked excitedly, pouring wine into her glass. No, you arranged everything wonderfully. But you could have at least given me a hint." But I had hinted. And then Sophia remembered how he'd given her 1,000 compliments in a day, candy and silly little things, asking her what kind of wine she preferred. He even said that she could go to the hairdresser instead of lying on the couch all day. She even resented him then. Turns out she was wrong. Jacob had indeed hinted at it many times, and she felt terribly ashamed of it. And then an unexpected participant in the meeting came to light. It was Eric, and that's when the puzzle in Sophia's head came together. "Oh, you slay bandits." The girl laughed at Eric. "But at least you could have warned me that I had to dress up." "Jacob forbade me," smiled Eric, putting the dish on the table. It was for cookies, partridges under some very delicious smelling sauce. Sophia threw an indignant yet appreciative look at her friend. After half an hour of eating the delicious wall and chatting cheerfully with Jacob, they moved on to more frank topics. "My parents died when I was only 9 years old," Sophia told him. "And my aunts and uncles are not the best people in the world. And my cousin wasn't so lucky either," Sophia complained, emptying another glass of wine. "Listen, you need something stronger for this conversation." The couple had not had their second glass of wine. And of course, it was more like 2 friends crying into each other's vest than a real date. Finally, they finished dessert and were about to go home. Of course, the fact that they lived in the same apartment came in handy. They had already reached home safely. And then Jacob stopped her. He turned the slightly drunk girl to himself and said, "Sophia, I'm such an asshole. I did not just start this date, and I did not dare to tell you. I had a specific purpose, namely to ask you to be together with me. I'm already with you." Stretched, united they, not understanding anything in the use of alcohol, very affected her ability to think logically and correctly perceive what I said I mean. "Would you like to be my girlfriend?" Sophia thought about it for a moment. She wanted to think it over. She wanted to weigh the pros and cons. But the adrenaline raging in her head answered for her. Yes. Definitely yes. She took the risk and laughed merrily. The boy stared at her for a long time. He didn't get the meaning of what she said. Had she really said yes, or was it just the drink? and is the wine in her talking. Then he took her face in the palms of his hands, turned it toward him, and imprinted on her warm pink lips, smelling of soft cream and tart cabernet. A passionate long kiss. She responded to him without any resistance. They spent a wonderful night together, and in the morning a happy but slightly discouraged Sophia was graced with a tray of coffee-scented Italian cheese fresh croissants and orange jam served right in bed. "You are the most beautiful girl in the world," Jacob told her, kissing her tenderly. "I just can't believe you're so self-sufficient, so stunning." "Turn to me, embarrassed Sophia." "Jesus, Sophia." He rolled his eyes and laughed. "Why do you think I've been courting you since that moment? The moment you crossed the threshold of my office? You have really low self-esteem. You need to do something about it, but stay out of it." He added, quickly seeing her eyes change expression and her lips tighten. "Look at you." He pulled her out of bed and set her in front of the mirror. "Look at what you see there." Sophia looked at herself for the first time as if from the outside, standing in a light nightgown. Beside him, she saw a slender girl of good height, and with a fine figure looking at her from the looking glass from somewhere on the other side of the unknown. This stranger had brilliant smoke and eyes with the luster of a jeweled pianist, eyebrows clearly drawn by nature itself, curves, beautiful, arched, pretty, pink lips not so plump as those of maidens. That solidly pumped nowadays themselves with silicone, but delicate and juicy, thick, fluffy eyelashes of the same dark shade as eyebrows, contacted with light, different golden waves in some places from nature hair. Not with the silk cascade that served her shoulders, her hair was always in the way, always getting in her eyes, and how she had never noticed before how beautiful it was. So, smiling and stroking her snowy shoulder, Jacob asked, "You have such peculiar lighting in here," Sophia told him off, and hurried away from the mirror. "But it's not a matter of admiration at all. You're a real beauty. How can you not see it?" Jacob continued to enlighten her. "And natural. You don't even wear makeup, do you?" "Yes," Sophia admitted with embarrassment. "I don't even have the money for it." "You don't need it," he exclaimed. "No, I'll buy you the best if you want, but you're stunning natural beauty. You know, honey, come here, I'll show you something." He sat down on the bed and beckoned her to him. "So I've dated a lot of girls, but they've all just spent long hours in beauty parlors, trying to improve themselves, getting their lips, eyebrows, nails, eyelashes done. Siphoned off fat, enlarged breasts, added silicone in every conceivable and unthinkable place, drew themselves permanent makeup. Sometimes I felt like I was dating mechanical dolls. After these procedures, they all look the same to me, you know. I don't get it. Why girls go to so much trouble to kill their individuality? You're different, you're warm, you're real." He put his arms around her, pulled her against him. Sophia was dizzy with happiness again, and she was completely out of control. The next day, their whole neighborhood knew about this amazing news. First, of course, was Sophia, said Kate. Then came Eric and some friends of Jacob. At first, Sophia was very embarrassed. She is dating her boss, to think about it. But with time, she got used to it. She insisted on continuing to go to work as before. There were still no privileges for her. Everything was very fair and just. Jacob and Sophia, it seemed to her, had managed to separate work and personal life. For the first 2 months, everything went just fine, and the girl hoped that it would always be like this. "Wash the dishes, please, there's a mountain of them, and soon there will be nowhere to put them," Eric asked her. He was still in charge of the coffee shop. Sophia had been very tired the last few days, whether from her studies, or from her new relationship, or from everything. Immediately, she wanted some kind of freedom. A regular free time that she could spend alone with herself like she used to. But now she didn't have a single free moment. Jacob was filling up her entire space. Sighing, she swore tiredly into the kitchen to do the dishes. And why couldn't they just buy a dishwasher? The process would be so much easier and more enjoyable. She looked down at her plate. Food residue stuck to it, greasy sauce stains, and a fit of terrible nausea swept over her. Sophia did not understand her reasons and immediately ran to the toilet. It was all right. She did not even vomit. however, continued to torment, like a new recruit on the ship. Dishes are clean. I'll probably go home, said Sophia tiredly, taking off her apron. Everything's fine, worried Eric, confused by her appearance. You look sickly. I look fine. It's okay, sighed the girl. Just tired. And she left. The next day, she planned a trip to visit her favorite friend, Katya. That finally took a decent role, not the main, of course, but not on the roll of the tree, as last year. The friend was so happy about her success that she decided to call the closest people to visit and celebrate it. Sophia bought a cake for this event, good champagne, and went to visit. Oh, darling, thanks for coming over for that cake. You shouldn't have. Kate was there to greet her. Sophia entered the apartment in high spirits. There were already 3 girls from Kate's acting class and a couple of boys from the same. She said hello to everyone and sat down on the couch. They played various charades, showed live pictures, and then it came to alcohol. Oh, don't pour, Sophia asked, because she felt nauseous again. Kate noticed this and sat down next to her. And sleepy, you're not feeling well? Concerned? Asked her friend. Sophia sat pale and was about to vomit. She realized it and rushed to the bathroom. Kate ran after her to support her hair. After this process, Sophia started to cry, sinking to the floor right next to the toilet. What's wrong with you? A concerned Kate asked. Should we call an ambulance? No. I'm fine now. Don't. Almost all the guests of the party, who were much more numerous than at the beginning, were crowding around the door. They were offering to help. Some offered a ride home, but Sophia refused. She didn't understand what was going on, and it scared her a lot. Could it be poisoning? Or an allergy to alcohol? One of the girls suggested. Or maybe she was just pregnant, joked one of the guys, for which he immediately got a punch in the back of the head from his girlfriend. This suggestion scared Sophia even more, but she was sure that was not the reason. She had had such urges from bad quality alcohol before. And Kate likes to save money on everything. Maybe she was saving money now too. Kate called Jacob to pick her up. But as soon as her friend brought the phone, Sophia Dahl snatched it out of her hands. What are you doing? Shouted, surprised by the behavior of her friend Kate. Don't call him now. He's busy. How could he be busy at 12 o'clock? He's working. Or maybe he's cheating on you, joked that shallow kid again. But then he and the forbidden one were asked to leave so he wouldn't embarrass Sophia with his inappropriate jokes anymore. Excuse him. He's a complete fool when he's drunk. Kate apologized for the guest. I don't even know how he got here. Jacob's really working. He's got an important project going on and he can't be distracted. Kate, I have a favor to ask, right? What do you want? Can you find someone here who's more or less sober and take me home in a cow I'm afraid to take? The friend looked around at the guests surrounding her. Everyone was already very drunk. Some of them had even had a chicken. Some were lying motionless on the floor. But in the very corner of the room by the balcony sat some quiet kid folding a Rubik's Cube. Kate immediately went over to him. Hey, can you take that girl over there home? Kate asked, pointing to Sophia, who was sitting staring at the floor. The guy didn't answer anything, but just nodded affirmatively. He drove Sophia quickly and carefully, and even helped her to the apartment. Sophia only peeked into the study to make sure Jacob was home. He was indeed sitting and working. All her worries turned out to be unfounded. He loves her very much. He would never cheat on her. She didn't bother to go in and strike up a conversation with him. He didn't care about her little problems right now. Sophia just laid down in the warm, soft bed, instantly falling asleep. All night long she was troubled by nightmares. And the fault was the words of that guy that creeped into her head. Maybe she was pregnant. The girl was always afraid of unwanted pregnancy. She wanted to study, build a career, and only then get involved in family life. So to be sure, the next morning she went to the drugstore and bought a test. It was negative. Sophia breathed a sigh of relief, but the nausea was still bothering her. It was clearly a sign of some kind of malfunction in her body. She decided to make an appointment for an ultrasound. Well, congratulations. You're a young mom now. You're eating right. You're taking care of yourself. and I'll see you next month. Then we can do an accurate analysis. You're only 3 weeks along, the doctor said. Sophia was in a terrible state. She felt frightened. Even real shock, she couldn't say a word for a minute. I'm sorry, she stammered, trying to say something to the doctor, and tears were already coming to her eyes. But the test was negative. Oh, these tests are so unreliable. Sometimes you have to do several of them to be sure of the result. And the only way to be 100% sure is to do an ultrasound. Why are you crying? You're so happy. You're what? Happy? I'm 19 years old. Sophia couldn't take it anymore. She tearfully left the office, holding the picture in her hands. The girl did not know how best to present it to Jacob to say at once and adjust, or maybe just say nothing and have an abortion. These thoughts accompanied her all the way home. And still she decided to call her friend. Kate had never turned away from her, and she would not turn away from her now. Yes, Sophia, I'm in the middle of rehearsal. Do you have something urgent? No, Sophia lied, barely suppressing a sob. Maybe I'll come to you tonight. I have to talk to you. Oh, of course. You know I'm always ready to discuss the latest gossip. That's it. I'll see you later. And the friend dropped the call, and Sophia was left to her own thoughts. She didn't want to go home. It seemed shameful, even though she and Jacob had never discussed it. Maybe he wouldn't mind having children, but then all plans for life would go down the drain, because for the next 18 years, everything would be for the child. Of course, they could afford it. Jacob, he's not a poor man. He's achieved a lot on his own. He would certainly not be against children, but what if he was? Sophia could not make a final decision until the evening, and realized that only her friend's advice would help her, or maybe her sympathy, or all together. She waited for her friend for a long time, but finally Kate showed up. They entered the house, poured themselves tea, and finally were able to start a dialogue. So what's up with you? Did you finally find out what's causing this nausea of yours? I did, Sophia said, taking another sip of tea. Well, tell me why you're so mysterious. I'm pregnant, Kate, the girl replied. Kate's eyes immediately widened and the mug of tea almost fell out of her hands. I'm sorry about that, she interjected. I'm not going to repeat it. You've heard it all. So thoughtfully stretched out her friend. What does Jacob say? He doesn't know. He doesn't know, shouted Kate. Stop yelling, Dad doesn't know. I don't know how he'll feel about it. I just found out today. Sophia took the ultrasound scan out of her jacket pocket and handed it to the girl. She scrutinized it carefully. You want my advice? Really? Asked Catherine. Yes, tell Jacob everything. He's a good guy, adequate. Together you will definitely make the right decision. I cannot advise anything in such cases. You're a couple. It's your child, and you have to make your own decision. Sophia decided to follow her friend's advice. The next day at dinner, she will finally tell Jacob everything. Deliciously, Sophia asked her young man in a friendly manner. He happily nodded. You are my favorite cook. Tomorrow we go to the registry office. The guy joked. The girl laughed back, although it was more of a hysterical laugh. Honey, I need to confess something to you, began. She was visible as Jacob immediately tensed up his face to a serious expression. And what is it? He asked sternly. The girl was covered with sweat, but still decided to pull herself together. Her hands and lips were shaking violently. She was silent for about a minute. Honey, what do you want to confess to me? The guy insisted. I want you to get it right. Basically, I'm pregnant. Jacob froze, turning into a stone figure. Sophia waited fearfully for an answer. Every second was killing her from the inside. Her hands continued to shake and her heart pounded frantically. Pregnant, then, the guy said gloomily. Finally recovered. So? The girl had expected anything but such a question. It was so stupid that it was embarrassing to answer. And what could one say to such a question? I'm sorry. What do you suggest I do? Jacob explained. I certainly wasn't planning on having a child with you, much less an abortion. You mean me, much less me. Shocked and indignant, the girl repeated his expression. She was now recognizing her young man from a new side. How so? You don't fit my status. A common orphan. Hardly fit to be the wife of a respectable man like me. her grief turned to anger. She was amazed at his cruel words. More importantly, they cut to the heart of the matter. "So you didn't plan to marry me?" "But Sophia, it's nothing personal. It's life. Don't take it so harshly. Did I tell you I wanted to get married? That's harsh. And the fact that you have a child now doesn't tell you anything. But it's still a formality. You had a kid. You don't have a kid. The main thing is not to drag it out." Sophia couldn't listen to any more of this nonsense. She'd had enough. She silently got up from the table, went to her room, gathered her things, and headed for the exit, almost unable to see where she was going because of her tears. Jacob said goodbye. "If you leave, you won't find work anywhere else. No one will take you in with a baby in your arms." "Goodbye, asshole," Sophia said as indifferently as possible and left. But she had nowhere else to go. It was terribly embarrassing to return to her friend, what she would tell her. The young man, a millionaire, had kicked her out of the house without kicking her out. She left on her own, and Sophia was back where she started in her so-called family. At her aunt and uncle's house, she hadn't been in touch since a week, hadn't charged her phone so she wouldn't be pestered with calls. If anyone came by, they were immediately chased away, saying Sophia wasn't here. Aunt Kelly had been terribly mean to Sophia at first when she confessed her situation, but then she softened. For some reason, she felt sorry for the single mother-to-be. Sophia dropped out of school. She didn't look for any job, she just lay on her bed all day long and thought about how cruel fate was. All her plans came crashing down one day. All relationships faded into oblivion, but one day no one was home. Alice was out again. My aunt and uncle had gone to work and the doorbell rang. Sophia didn't answer it, but it kept ringing, and very insistently. Eventually that sound then became annoying. Now Sophia that she had to go to the door and look through the peephole. As she went, she dropped her keys from the nightstand, which caused a distinctive sound that the uninvited visitor obviously heard. Through the thin, cheap door, Sophia took a deep breath. It was Kate. "Sophia, open up. I know you're in there. I'll stand here until you open the door," Sophia snapped. "Sophia, open up. This is very important. It's about your baby," Kate declared. That intrigued Sophia. "In what way?" she asked. "Open it and you'll find out quickly. The case does not require a possessor." Sophia grudgingly opened the door. Kate immediately rushed into the apartment and grabbed the girl by the arm. "Just kidding. There's no news. But I had to get to you somehow," explained her friend hurriedly. Sophia was terribly offended by this. She wanted to break free, but the grip was firm. They had to go to the bedroom to work things out. "I know you don't want to listen to anyone right now," Kate began, "but I don't care. You're really depressed, and as your best friend, it's my responsibility to support you. So tonight you're going to the theater with me." "God, Kate, what theater? What the hell are you talking about?" She's starting to whine. Sophia, lying down on the bed, covering herself with a blanket. "My theater is opening night, and you have to support me. I could use some support myself." Sophia was indignant. "Sophia, if you want me to still be your friend tonight at 7, I look forward to seeing you at the play." With those words, Kate walked away, leaving her friend to ponder. Sophia was hysterical again. She didn't want to go anywhere at all. She hadn't left the house in a week, and she was determined to continue like this indefinitely. But Kate had always been there for her in her darkest moments. She owed it to her to repay her friend with kindness. It would be good for her, too. Sophia got ready, put on makeup, put on a beautiful dress, and entered the theater. The performance lasted an hour and a half. Sophia gave it a hard 3. All the same, young actors still have to study and learn, Kate included, but the costumes were very colorful. After the performance, Kate decided to celebrate this furor, in their opinion, in a cafe. Of course, Sophia was forced to go with them. The girl for a long time refused, however, eventually gave in. Of course, by the will of fate, they went to the very cafe, the cafe that forever linked Sophia with the man who spoiled her life. "Oh, Diamond, did you see the duck's face when it jumped on the pole?" Kate laughed, holding out an alcoholic cocktail from all this company only Sophia didn't drink. And she felt out of place here. The atmosphere of the cafe was also a terrible pressure. She prayed that she wouldn't accidentally show up at the door. Jacob, guys, I have a headache. I should probably get going. Sophia lied. Even she seemed to make a better actress than these guys. Everyone nodded. Kate offered to walk her out. What did Sophia say? That she was just tired and didn't need any help. That was partly true. This kind of activity after a week of lying on the bed had taken a toll on Sophia. It all happened too fast. Walking out of the cafe, she almost cried. It was raining like a bucket. There was no money for a cab. Her mood was lousy. Kate didn't want to go back to her friends. The girl decided that she was not afraid of anything and walked home. But as soon as she took the first step, something spit out from under her feet. Sophia lifted her foot. In the puddle lay a wallet. She opened it to see if there was any money in it. Maybe she would have had enough for a cab, but there was almost nothing there. Just a couple of crumpled bills, some meaningless coupons, an old bank card and a photograph, a picture. God. Sophia moved closer to the lantern to get a good look at the picture. Really? Yes, it was a picture of her own mother. Here she was so young and beautiful. There was a reason everyone said that Sophia looked a lot like her mother, and so she was. Sophia stood in one place for a long time, not understanding how her late mother's picture had ended up in this purse. But she was too tired to think about it for long. After making her way to her beau's house, she quickly fell asleep. The next day, she decided to go to the very address that was written on the crumpled piece of paper. In Sophia's purse was just throwing that purse away. However, it was necessary to find out how the picture ended up here. The road led her to a huge mansion on the outskirts. It was somehow unbelievable. The house was so richly decorated on the outside that Sophia double-checked the address another 1,000 times. What if she had gotten the wrong place? But no, it was the right place. Sophia rang the doorbell. An elderly man in an expensive suit opened the door a minute later. "What can I do for you?" "Do you have an appointment?" he asked the stranger politely. He seemed to be an employee of the house. The inside of the mansion looked as rich as the outside. Marble floors, glass chandeliers. Hearing voices, a woman in her 50s came out to meet her. It seemed to be the lady of the house herself. She seemed very friendly. After hearing from the girl the reason for her visit, the woman immediately offered her a cup of tea and invited her into the living room. Sophia was interested in her appearance. She reminded her of someone. "My name is Lucy. It's very nice to meet you. So you said you found my wallet?" The lady asked anxiously. Sophia nodded affirmatively. She took the wallet out of her bag and handed it to the hostess. "Oh, thank you, and I searched it. There's nothing of value in it, just one. A picture very dear to me," the woman confessed. "To be honest," Sophia began, taking a sip of tea, "that's why I came to you." The woman raised her perfectly painted eyebrows in surprise. "I'm listening to you. Where did you get this picture?" "It's an old close friend of mine." The woman smiled. "My Maria. She and I were actually very close in the past," Lucy said, stroking the photograph as if it were warm and alive. "You see, this is my mother," Sophia said. What's the woman's reaction? "So you're my monkey's daughter. I didn't know she had children. I haven't seen her in a long time. I thought she was living abroad now. She's dead," Sophia said sharply. The woman's face immediately darkened, her eyes darkened, her lips quivered. "How long ago?" she asked quietly, as if afraid to cry. "It's been 10 years. But explain how you know her. Didn't your mother ever tell you about you?" "Of course she didn't. Honey, she and I had a terrible fight when we were young, and we never saw each other again." "What was the quarrel about, if it's no secret?" Sophia was interested. She wanted every detail. For some reason, she felt a connection and support when she heard that this woman knew her mother. "There were no secrets. We were both 18 when we were young. Stupid, naive girls. One of us fell in love with a handsome, athletic, well-built guy. Just a dream. All the girls fell for him. Me and your mom were no exception. Of course she got him. I mean, she was so beautiful. You can't take your eyes off her. You look just like her." Dear Lucy smiled sadly, and then she got involved. "I started literally chasing this Pavlik. I couldn't let them get away. Although, to be fair, I didn't even like him at all. It was a matter of competition. Lucy giggled with embarrassment. I was such a fool back then. I ended up beating Pavel away from her. And I quit almost immediately. So you didn't need the prize, did you, your friend? I mean, she really loved him. Of course, we had a fight. We never spoke again. Then I killed that friendship with my own hands. Lucy got in over her head. And I still blame myself for that. So when I want to do something rash, I always look at her picture and remember what a huge mistake I made. You can't do that, you know, girl. Yeah, Sophia could only reply after hearing that. She was amazed by the story. Yeah, things could have been different with Mike and me. How did you find the wallet where I put it? I was leaving the cafe next to the theater, you know, and I found it in a puddle. As soon as I saw my mom's picture, I was interested. I'm sorry. There was hardly any money there. I didn't want to come all the way out here for nothing. You're a long way from home. Oh, what rage. Hoppa was leaving her clumsy nephew and was so angry with him that she didn't even notice the purse was missing. The nephew was interrogated by Sophia. Yes, he owns this cafe, or rather, how he owns it. He got everything from me. Daddy, he had you as an idiot. So I decided to help it not to teach. But he manages to screw up even this simple business. What are you gonna do? Isn't your nephew's name Jacob by any chance? Almost frightened? Sophia asked. Yes. How did you guess? Sweetie? Asked the woman. It turns out that I know your nephew very well. Sophia suddenly told the woman everything that had happened to her. She did not forget to mention that he had cruelly lied to her, saying that he had achieved it all on his own. No, look at him. What an impudent and deceitful man. The woman was outraged. When it all came out, Jacob finally had to answer for it. Lucy threatened him with disinheritance, after which Jacob had to recognize the child. A month later, he and Sophia were married, but it was just a formality. After all, Sophia's child had to be born in a legal marriage. Now we can divorce indifferently, Sophia said. Throwing the documents to the guy on the table, she herself is already afraid of the baby. It was born 3 days ago. And of course, the first thing the young mother was going to do was to end this horrible story. Jacob silently signed the papers and they were officially divorced. What a relief it was for both of them. Sophia no longer felt anything but disgust for him. As for his feelings, that remained behind the scenes, as they say. Lucy had made the newborn they named Dimitri their heir instead of Jacob. She had never had children, and she had long ago become disillusioned with her nephews. Sophia, at her insistence, moved into this rich house. The mother's friend did not dote on the baby, walked with him, fussed with him, did everything to Sophia more rest, hired 2 nannies, provided the young mother with everything so that she did not need anything, assigned her a monthly allowance. Sophia was reluctant at first, but Lucy convinced her that such generosity was not for nothing. Sweetheart, this is the least I have to do for my sweet girl. Maria, she said affectionately. Don't deprive me of the opportunity to be at ease with myself again. Sophia understood her position and agreed. The court ordered Jacob to pay alimony to his son, which the guy did not like, but it was pointless to argue with the law. Everything was getting better in Sophia's life. She met a friend, Kate from the theater school, and a romantic relationship began between them. It was still hard to tell if they had a future. However, the romance is the same quiet guy who drove her home somehow, took great care of the girl, adopted her son, and did everything that a well-mannered person with good intentions should do. 6 months passed in this situation, and Lucy became seriously ill. She was lying in the hospital under a drip. For a whole month, the doctors had already tuned the loved ones for a sad outcome. Sophia visited every day this woman who had saved her life and pulled her out of the abyss. Honey, I'm so glad you're happy too. Lucy spoke softly. Sophia sat next to her and held her hand. It was very hard for her to fight the emotions that came over her. But she held on. Can I open the drawer, please? Lucy asked. Sophia complied with the request and took out from there many sheets of paper, stapled with a violin. This is my testament. She coughed on almost every word, and it was scary to look at. It's all signed and signed for sure. I wish you the happiest of lives. And Roma, he's a good guy, you watch out. Lucy, honey. Sophia cried, looking at the dying woman. Don't do anything. She just didn't have time to say anything. Her heart stopped, but the woman had said enough and done more, and died with herself, just as she wanted to after the funeral. Sophia scrutinized the documents. All of her inheritance went into her control. Until little Mike came of age, Lucy had left something to Jacob personally as well. She left only his business, which eventually went under. Lucy Lai bought up her guilt to her friend by doing such a good deed. Her soul was definitely going to be at peace now. There was only one last thing left to do. One frowning, windy afternoon in the city cemetery, the young woman, accompanied by an earnest companion, watched the solemn ceremony of burying the ashes of the late Lucy next to her parents' grave. Following this, a new plaque appeared on a fresh headstone. From now and forever, you and I are together. No foolishness, no vanity can separate us now. Maria plus Lucy equal eternal friendship. These were the words that Sophia wanted to see in place of her comfort on her benefactors. In the finale of this story, everyone got what they wanted, or what they deserved, depending on their actions and their attitude to this life, and to the people we meet on the long, hard road.
Subscribe and click the bell.
He often had nightmares. He wakes up in the night in a cold sweat. Something is troubling him. The boy gets out of bed, goes to the stairwell, looks around. No one's there. He walks down the stairs. It's business as usual. And when he gets outside, he sees that there's been an apocalypse. Everything's destroyed. The houses have been turned into piles of bricks. There's no one on the street. There's someone peeking around the corner. With some sixth sense, the boy realizes it's not a person. He jumps out of his seat and runs back into the entryway. But now there are only stairs. There are no walls. The boy screams, and at that moment he wakes up. Son, what's wrong? Mom's awake too. It was just a bad dream. He was still sitting on the bed, confused. It seemed like everything he'd just seen was true. Come on, get to bed for school tomorrow. The woman muttered. Okay. The boy agreed with her, although he didn't really want to do it. He went back to bed, fell asleep, and the dream seemed to go on. It was scary, but he couldn't wake up. The next day, Christopher got up in the morning, exhausted. He couldn't pull himself together. He really wanted to sleep, but the kid went to school anyway. He knew if he didn't, his parents wouldn't be happy. The family lived in an ordinary town. Christopher had a sister. The birth father was long gone. His mother lived with her new husband, who was the boy's stepmother. Mom, are we going to take a little longer walk with the boys tonight? Asked the son in the evening. What's the matter? The woman looked at him. Oh, he just shrugged his shoulders. I don't know what to say. All weekend, please, but not during the week. The woman was stern. All right, we all don't like these lectures. He went out to the yard, told his friends that it wasn't going to work out today. They were meeting at one of the houses in their neighborhood. The young people there had taken over the basement. Now, when they studied already in the 8th grade, they couldn't smoke and drink beer. But back then, they had to walk around a lot longer to get the air out. Then we'll sit here, showed Stephen to a bench in the yard. Great, no one argued with him. Why go anywhere when everyone lives nearby? There was no ringleader or ringleader in the group. Everyone was on an equal footing. It was the 90s, so young people did what they could. We'd go out on the weekend, the man would say. Of course, it was a favorite. If we were lucky, guys from another neighborhood would come over. We could wave. Stephen said, yeah, we'd have to get ready. Christopher remembered the last time the opponents had brass knuckles. All they could come up with was a rock for insulation. Don't teach a scientist, his comrade told him. In those years, young people did not think of anything else. There was practically nowhere to go. All the circles ended in the afternoon, And in the evening, the boys were left to themselves. They gathered together, discussed a plan of action, took money somewhere, bought cheap alcohol, drank it at construction sites or abandoned. Hey, Christopher. One day, an older comrade came up to the guy. Hi. Looked at him. It was Rick. He graduated 2 years ago, and now he was looking for intrepid youngsters. Come on, let's step back. We need to talk. He knew Christopher was not a shy guy and could do a lot of things. Christopher looked back at his friends and followed his older comrade. Of course, it was a little scary because he knew what Rick was doing, but it was embarrassing in front of his friends if he didn't go. The young men rounded the corner of the building, and Rick looked around and handed Christopher 2 matchboxes. What are these? The boy did not understand then. You don't know? Rick winked at him. I guess, Christopher told him. Well, if you guess, you probably know what to do with it, smirked the older man. Roughly, Christopher quickly stashed what he had just been handed in his pocket. You hand it over, you'll get some good money. There was a piece of paper that said who to hand it all over to. Okay, the boy walked back towards the school. He didn't look back at Rick. At first it was very scary because Christopher was afraid that someone would see or find out what he was doing. But once, twice, 3 times, and then he felt at ease because not only did he have good money, but he also hung around in circles with the older guys. Knew if anybody took offense, you could just tell them, and they'd stand up for him. Christopher, are you coming or not? Stephen called out to him, but he had to wait for the bell to ring and hand over what was in his pocket. Wait a minute, the young man waved him away. Listen, tell me, why have you been so different lately? A friend came up to him. Let me tell you everything later. It's just not the right time. The guy didn't want to share information with anyone because he was afraid that everything would come out. Over the weekend, they met up with Rick again. He handed him some matchbooks. There's more than enough here. Christopher looked at the one. I won't be in for a while. So if they ask, you can sell it, said Rick to him. I hear you. They parted ways. Christopher came home. There were 2 boxes in his pocket. They were straight up igniting his pants all the way through. The boy knew that if his mother found these in his pants, nothing good would come of it. In the evening, he went for a walk. He met Stephen in the yard. Listen, friend, I have something very important to tell you. Christopher came up to him. Go ahead. A friend was always willing to listen. Do you remember Rick, who approached me at school? He asked him. Of course I remember, smiled Stephen. So Christopher began to tell him what was going on. Do you want something from me? Stephen stood. He was in complete shock. He had no idea that there was such a thing going on at the school. Here, you can hide this at your house or something. He took the boxes out of his pocket. Wow, he opened one of them. Close it, or you'll wake up. He kept looking around. He was afraid that someone might see them. Listen, why don't we try it? Stephen smiled. I don't even know. Then we'd have to invest the money, the guy shrugged. All right, let's lay down. It's not that expensive, said his friend. That afternoon, a group of guys gathered in their den. In theory, they knew how it was done, so it wasn't anything complicated. Christopher took a drag. He didn't feel anything like that. It even felt to him like normal cigarettes. Afterward, when the boys went home, they felt a little dizzy. And no matter what anyone says now, it seemed ridiculous. The boy came home, saying something, giggling. The mother suspected something wrong. She began to question her son, but he remained silent, said nothing. Then the next day, the woman called a policeman she knew and shared her suspicions with him. He offered to hold a preventive conversation on the topic that was worrying all parents now, but he also said that the mother should not warn anyone. Let the son not know, he would think it was a stranger to no one. And so it was agreed. In the evening, when Christopher came home, they had a policeman sitting in the kitchen. Hello. I looked at him, and his knees were shaking. He now thought he had done the right thing when he gave Stephen the box. Passing Christopher, I am waiting for you, the man told him. Christopher walked into the kitchen, sat down across from him. He didn't look up. He was really scared that he was about to start talking, and his mom and everyone else would find out what he was doing. So, young man from the school has received a signal that you are doing the wrong things, and you need to have a preventive conversation with you. So here I am, said the man. Was he writing something in his notebook? I didn't do anything like that, Christopher began to mumble. But then I thought, the more you get lost, the more they'll think of you. So he shut up. I'm not accusing you of anything yet. The man in uniform smirked. Then why did you come? The boy didn't understand. The mother stood near him and saw that her son was not comfortable. I told you, it's a preventive conversation. Everyone knows that there are a lot of illegal substances now. They are distributed among school children and other residents of our city. I just want you to know that if you suddenly get into a company where they do it, or even worse, start using or distributing, then nothing good awaits you in the future, said the policeman. I understood. Christopher shook his head. He really understood that it was very dangerous, and if he kept doing it, someone would find out or he would get caught. 2 days later, when they met Rick, we all told him so. And no amount of money, no amount of persuasion could make him keep doing it now. The boy wanted to finish 9 grades and leave school. But in the past, all parents were in favor of their child necessarily completing a full school course, that is, 11 grades, and then go to good educational institutions. No, my dear you study all the years, you will get a certificate. And when you turn 18, then, please, decide everything for yourself and do what you want, his mother told him. But why waste 2 years? Christopher didn't understand. I think you will waste them that way if you even leave school. The mother was worried about her son. Now that Christopher had his own opinions, he often argued with his mother because their views were very different from each other. The young man was fascinated by computer technology. He was constantly collecting, disassembling, looking at how everything is organized, trying to do something new. When he was in his senior year of high school, he already realized that he could assemble and disassemble a computer, as well as fix it. So maybe that's what you'll do with your life, his mother told him. I haven't decided yet, he answered her. It's just that I see you're good at it. She stood and watched her son at the table as he deftly went through the parts and put one to the other. Yes, okay, I'll think about it, he promised his mother. He only had one friend left at school now. That was Stephen. Almost everyone from the yard had moved away. They'd gone to school. They talked lightly about the future, how and what would happen. Now we'll finish school and they'll take us to the army, Christopher said. So he served normally. We'll come back, then we'll start working, said Stephen. That's what they decided. After that, they started to think of something to do. There were a lot of ideas, but it was all wrong. They needed money for one thing and money to start another. They also needed equipment to buy. Then the guys threw some plans on a sheet of paper and decided to think about it later. And suddenly something would change, and they would have a down payment for their startup. And now it was time for exams, which were easily passed because the guys never had any problems with their studies. Only graduation was ahead. On this festive day, the mother was very worried. The suit was the dinner. She had the dress ready. And here her son is standing at the graduation. He is given a certificate. Now the school principal says farewell words that they are releasing the guys into free sailing, almost right before graduation. Christopher turned 18, so it was not far off to receive a summons to the military enlistment office. And it came. Now the guy had to pass a medical examination and then go to the army. At least they would send him somewhere not far away, said the mother, who was upset for the child. Don't worry as if I'm still a kid, Christopher told her. And you will always be little to me. His mother hugged him. Even though he didn't like all that tenderness, he didn't push her away. The day came when the guy was sent off to the army. Some acquaintances and friends gathered, and the next day, he was on his way to the station. "Son, right," his mother said to him and cried. "I will," he told her, smiled, and entered the car. Christopher was not at all worried. It was not the first time he had encountered difficulties. He even wanted to know what would happen next, where he would arrive, who would meet him, and how things would be. Everything went well, just as the mother wanted. The son was sent not so far from home. When the oath was administered, she just took the 4:00 bus, and she was already at the location where Christopher was serving. Yes, at first it was difficult for the boy. He had to get into a new team. Everyone has their own habits, their own opinions. And of course, arguments with the old employees. Nobody canceled that. After 6 months of service, everything was normal. Christopher continued to serve. It was already time for demobilization. He missed home very much. When he went there, he was even worried. He went to a flower store, bought a bouquet for his mom. "Hello, dear." A woman hugged him at the entrance. "Mom, I'm so tired and I miss you. I want something homemade." He told her. Sure enough, now off she went to the kitchen. That day and the next few were wonderful. I liked everything here. He remembered a lot of things, looking out the window. They used to run with their friends in this yard. And another mom, "Do you know where Stephen is now?" He asked the woman after a week at home. "How would I know? I don't keep track of him." Did she look at him? What so aggressively? Didn't understand the woman's mood. Nothing. She went to the kitchen. In fact, the woman had already gone to work for a day and thought that the son does nothing, but just sits at home. And yet the young man followed her into the kitchen. "Christopher, you've been sitting at home for over a week now. Why don't you get a job somewhere?" And she looked at him seriously. "What are you starting? Get a job when you need one." He shook his head, realizing that everything was starting over. And when that time would come, she wondered. "Mom, don't start." He went back to the room. They were not interested. The young man didn't want to work in a factory or for some uncle. He had a lot of ideas. He wanted to do his own thing. It was necessary to find Stephen, because Christopher was sure that the two of them could do a lot of things together. The next day, the young man got ready. He decided to go to Stephen, and if he couldn't find him, at least ask his parents where he was. "Hello." He arrived at his friend's house. "Oh, Christopher, hello." Stephen's mom hugged him. "Where's my best friend?" he asked her. "And he went to the village to help his grandmother," said the landlady. "And when will he be home?" he asked. "I don't even know." "And you go to his place. You'll have a rest there." His mother dictated the address where his grandmother lived. "Thank you." Christopher didn't mind seeing his friend. He went straight from here to the train station. He didn't bother to warn his mother. An adult already does what he wants. The trip only took about an hour. Then it was a few minutes' walk to the right house. And here the boy is already knocking on the window. He saw his friend, who pulled back the curtains, looked, and as if he could not believe that a friend had come to see him. "What are you looking at? Open up." Christopher laughed. "No way." Then Stephen shouted and disappeared through the window. A few seconds later, the gate opened, and a guy came out. "Didn't you recognize me?" Christopher asked his comrade. They hugged each other. "How can you recognize? How long we have not seen each other?" The young man was happy. "Invite me into the house," asked Christopher. "Sure, let's go." Grandma just baked pies. They went into the yard and then into the house. They sat down at the table. The woman poured them tea, put in the center huge dishes with pies, wished them a pleasant appetite, and went behind a curtain into another room. "Well, how's it going? Tell me." Christopher took a bite of the cake. "Everything's fine. I'm waiting for you. Lots of plans." Stephen smiled. "Well, here I am." Christopher spread his arms out. "All right, let's get started. We just need to think about housing. With my parents do not want to live like that," complained Comrade. "Great, and I wanted to talk to you about it." Christopher rejoiced. After all, two to rent a place is easier than one. "Ugh, And I thought I could not afford it. Stephen exhaled. No, everything will be fine, assured his friend. That was the deal. The friends decided to spend a few days here in the village and then go to the city and start doing something. I'm so glad we haven't lost touch, Christopher said as they drove back to the city. It's okay. Stephen shook his head. He remembered from his childhood what an inventor and initiator Christopher was. I hope so. The boy agreed with him. Christopher arrived home. He thought his mother was going to throw herself at him and start asking him where he had been, why he hadn't warned her. But nothing of the sort happened. Did you go for a walk? Was all she asked when the young man entered the apartment. Aha. He didn't say anything. He went into the room, took out a sports bag, and started packing. That's a long way to go. Mom walked in the same way. We're from Stephen and decided to rent an apartment, he told her. Great. As if the woman was even happy. She went back into the kitchen. But all the while he was standing in the hallway, thinking that his mom would at least come out to him. Aha, come on, shouted the one from the kitchen. He went to a friend, who had to ask an acquaintance who rented the apartment whether it is still there or already rented. Zdorova. Well, he asked Stephen. Everything is fine. The apartment is not yet rented, so you can move in right now, said the friend Christopher. Great. He smiled. They took some of Stephen's things and went to the place where they were going to live. After that, the friends sat down at the table to talk about what they wanted to do now. The guys came up with a very good idea with discs and audio cassettes. They were now calculating what they would need. Knowing that my uncle has a basement space, I don't think he needs it. We'll have to ask, Stephen said. If this works out, we'll have very little cost, said Christopher to a friend. And it did work out for the boys. The uncle gave them this little space in the basement. They bought, copied equipment, discs, paper. Everything was gonna work out, everything. And somewhere he took an old computer. He said he gave it to them cheap, but with God. They opened up and began to place ads wherever they could. On the third day, they got a very large order. Guys, hello. A respectable man came to them. Hello. The guys didn't expect this. They thought it would be a one-off. But to do it all at once, I don't know if your work is good or bad, but I have a very urgent order. The customer looked at the surprised guys. Are you talking? Christopher was the first to speak. I have several 1,000 discs. They all need to be processed in 3 days. He said that a few 1,000. Christopher grinned and looked at the equipment they had. I'll give you an advance payment. Anything you say. Just do it, please, the man asked. It was obvious that the matter was urgent. Okay, just let's discuss some points. He looked at his friend Christopher, who was still silent. That's it. What do you say? The customer was in agreement. After that, Christopher explained to him what and how. Good, and here is the money he took out of his pocket, a solid sum put on the table. Bring the discs and see you in 3 days. Christopher said goodbye to him. Have you been making noise for 3 days? Stephen jumped on him. What's the big deal? He didn't understand. You can't do it in a week, especially with our equipment. The comrade almost cried. Calm down. He left us so much money for them. We'll buy a normal machine, spoke Christopher with knowledge. And if we fail? Stephen did not believe in his own strength. It'll be okay. We'll get through this, Christopher promised him. I don't know. The friend doubted. From that moment on, they began to work hard. They decided to work both day and night. At first one would go out, the other would sleep, then they would switch. On the third day, they really had everything ready. The customer arrived. He was afraid that it would turn out like with the past performers. He had already given this order to others, but as time passed, when he arrived, he was simply told they couldn't do the job. Guys. He walked in without a greeting and looked at those who worked in this basement. Yes, hello. Come on in. Stephen was cheerful today because he realized that they had done a very difficult job. Did you make it in time? The man looked at them. Of course we did. I promised. Christopher stood up and pointed to the boxes that stood in the corner. First, the customer looked at everything, hummed, shook his head, and paid the rest of the money to the guys. And plus, he added a thank you for the speed. Bye. We'll definitely come to you again. He winked at the guys and called the workers to take the boxes away. Wow, Stephen looked at the money. There was enough here to pay several months' rent. And there was still a decent chunk left over. Well, let's get on with it. I held out my hand to him. Sure, laughed his friend and partner. Today the guys decided to relax a little, go to a cafe and celebrate the completion of a successful deal. Beer? Asked the bartender when they walked in. Thank you, nodded the guys and went to the table. Both of them were in high spirits. They sat and discussed further plans. Toward evening, more people started coming to the cafe. Soon there was not a single free seat left. At that moment, two girls entered the hall. They looked around since there were no seats, approached the bar. Wait, Stephen stopped them. He looked at the girls. He thought of something. It became interesting, now he got up from the table and went to the bar. There he talked to the girls about something. They laughed, and then he and the guy came back to their table. Hi. They looked at Stephen. One took a seat next to the topic, and the other sat down with Stephen. Saw that there was no seat available for them. So that's why he offered to join us, the guy explained to his friend. I see. Until then, Stephen could not understand how it had happened so quickly. Introductions. I'm Sophia, and this is my girlfriend Camille, said one of the girls. Nice to meet you. You already know me. And this is my friend Stephen. Introduced him Christopher. Well, maybe we'll have a beer too. The girls looked at each other. Sure, we're having a party tonight. The friends told them about their deal. Wow, you could tell they were interested. After that, they went for a walk around the city, and when they said goodbye, the guys invited the girls to visit. They'd promised to come the very next day in the rented apartment of the guys. There were 4 people sitting in the kitchen. How about a game of cards and a couple on a couple? Stephen asked. Why not? I'm with Camille, said Christopher and winked at her. I agree. The girl smiled back and blushed. She liked the guy. Back then at the cafe, they were dealt the cards and the game began. Guys and girls were laughing, saying something. It was clear that Stephen and Sophia also liked him. In the evening, the friends separated. Each went to see the girl home. When they came home, they shared their impressions. The next day after work, the company gathered again. It went on like this every night. Girls, why are we all going back and forth with you? Move in with us, said Stephen after 2 months of acquaintance. What if you don't mind? Camille was looking at Christopher. So Stephen and Sophia started living in one room, and Christopher and Camille in the other. At first, everything was very good, friends working together, girlfriends studying together, and doing everything at home together. But after 2 years of living together, the girls started telling their boyfriends to move out. Everyone wanted something different. We're gonna live like this for a long time. We need to start a family, Camille told Christopher in the room. You realize it's going to be a strain on our budget. Her boyfriend convinced her otherwise. I can't do that. Sophia doesn't want to either. The girl took offense. The guys went on about their business. But as time goes on, things change. And what they were doing was no longer in demand. Now orders were coming in, but they were many times less. Accordingly, the income from it was small. Once I got a call from a friend who lived in another city. It was not far away and it was many times smaller than where the guys lived and worked now. Hi. Christopher greeted him. Listen, I decided to call you because I know you're good at this. Started telling John why he was calling. But he didn't understand anything yet. Christopher decided to open a repair shop here. Computers, cell phones, other appliances. You're good at that. Spoken with enthusiasm, friend. So do I. What do you want? I'm starting to get a little more up to speed. Christopher. Come, we'll work together. We don't have anything like this yet. And people break things all the time. There was so much enthusiasm in the young man's voice, I'd have to think about it. Christopher asked for some time. Yes, of course. I can't stand you, agreed the friend. After this conversation, the guy thought about it. Yes, it was a great option to make money, but it was necessary to leave here in a small town. What to do? He didn't know. Camille, I need to talk to you, he said to the girl. Go ahead. She looked at him. Remember you said we should separate. I want to offer you an option. He told her everything that his friend had suggested to him, that he go to some backwater. She cringed. There you can rent an apartment cheaper, and the income will be decent, he persuaded the girl. I don't know. I don't want to. She almost stomped her feet. Well, think about it. I'll probably definitely go. He went to Stephen to tell him the same thing. His friend didn't support him either. He said that if he wanted to go, he could leave and he could stay here. Christopher didn't realize that he was the only one in his head thinking that everything would work out, and what difference did it make what city to live in. 2 weeks later, he called John, said that he had decided everything and would soon come to look for an apartment for him. The friend was happy, agreed, and said he was looking forward to it. Christopher, I'm pregnant. In the evening, Camille surprised him. I'm glad. He smiled. What to do now? I wasn't going to go anywhere. She was almost crying. Why didn't you say so before? I thought we were together. He sat down in front of her. I don't. She shrugged her shoulders. Are you going to go? He looked her in the eyes. What to say now? She couldn't accept the thought. Stephen regretted that he would have to part with his friend, but the latter had already decided everything. They saw their friends off to the train station, but all for now. Come and visit, Christopher said and shook his friend's hand. The girls said goodbye too. John, as promised, rented them an apartment, so now the couple had already arrived there. They settled in quickly. Christopher and John started working, just as the friend had said they would. There were tons of people. Everyone had something broken, and they were carrying the workshop to them. The money was very good. Camille stayed home. She was getting ready to be a mother. What's there to do in this little town? Not even anywhere to go. The girl was always teaching. Nothing. Now you will give birth. Then we will find something to do, Christopher reassured her. He took care of Camille as best he could, bought what she asked for. He did almost everything himself. When the due date came, the girl went to the hospital. There were no problems. The labor went perfectly. 5 days later, the happy father met them at the hospital. Why don't you propose to me? Camille asked him one night. Why do you feel so bad? He looked at her in surprise. We have a child. It's time to become a family, she replied. No, I don't want to. Why do I need an extra stamp in my passport? He answered her easily. Then you don't love me. She folded her arms across her chest and turned away from him. Please don't start. He didn't like all these concerts. Right now, Camille was at home with the baby. Christopher was working. The daughter was already 5 years old when Camille started talking about the wedding again. Why are you bothering me with this proposal? The young man was annoyed. I want a wedding, she told him. I don't. He was getting even more annoyed. Then I'm going to leave. She gave him a wait and see look. What do you expect? That I'll talk you out of it or run out to buy a ring, he grinned. They'd been fighting a lot lately. Camille had been the one to stir it up. And now that she said she was leaving, Christopher didn't mind. That's it, I'm going to my mom's and you won't see the baby. She turned and walked away. What makes you think that? Was surprised by the young man. He realized that the girl was trying to hurt him. And what have you done for her? Camille stopped, realizing what had hurt him. Did you, Christopher, have a right to ask that question? From the moment she was born, he had sat by Evelyn's crib almost every night, putting her to bed. Then, when her teeth started teething, he rocked her in his arms. Then he took the girl to kindergarten, practiced, taught her to read, count, write. Camille at this time not only did not work anywhere, but she disappeared all day at the girlfriends, which she had here appeared. or at the beauty parlor. All of this is my last word. She went into the bathroom and slammed the door. Christopher went to his daughter's room. He just wanted to talk to her. Of course, if there had been no Evelyn, this breakup would not have been so painful. Now the father walked over to Evelyn, beckoned her over and hugged her. "Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you so sad?" she asked him. "Your mom and I had a fight, and now she wants to take you away to Grandma's house. Don't worry, sometimes that happens between adults, but you and I will always be in touch." He pulled her even tighter against him. "Good." The girl cried. She felt sorry for her daddy and mommy. The very next day, Camille with her belongings and daughter left. Christopher was at work at that moment. In the evening, when he came back and found no one, he felt very bad. He went down to the yard, went to the store, got himself a beer. Now he sat in the kitchen, poured the amber liquid into a glass and drank. There was nothing to be sad about except his daughter. He drank, felt very tired, got up and went to bed. No one was bothering him today. There was no need to go anywhere, to do anything. So he just closed his eyes and fell asleep. The young man began to live alone. It might have seemed difficult at first. You had to cook, go to work, clean. But soon he got used to it. Now he had a lot of free time. He began to work not only in the workshop, but also at home. "Hi," John greeted him at work. "How are you?" Christopher asked him. "I'm fine. Come and visit tonight." It was Saturday. John and his wife were going to stoke the bathhouse. The guy had long dreamed of a private house and had finished building it about 6 months ago. John was most proud of his bathhouse. It turned out to be big. That's where they gathered. Of course, there is nothing to do at home anyway. And you want to talk to someone. Christopher agreed. They had worked today and decided that they would go straight from here to the store and go to John. "What are we drinking?" The friend looked at Christopher. "Beer, what else do you drink in a bathhouse?" He was already putting glass bottles in the basket. "Great." The man agreed with him. They arrived while John's wife was cooking something in the house. The young men flooded the bathhouse, brought water and firewood, and decided that they would also make a kebab. Well, here came the treat. A girl came to the bathhouse. "Thank you, my dear." John sat his wife on his knee. "Now Jenna will also come," said the girl. "Good." Christopher winked at his host. It had been about 6 months since Camille had broken up with him, but Christopher didn't want to meet or date anyone yet. "Aha," he replied. Jenna burst in like a hurricane. She started talking from the door, laughing. "Let's get to know each other." "This is my friend Christopher," said to her John. "Hi." She smiled at him. Christopher did not like such animals, and the girl was not to his taste. All evening they talked. He even walked her home. But he couldn't say he wanted to keep talking to her. Hi. He saw her the next day. A message from Jenna on social media writing. He told John at the time. "What is writing and who is interested in that one?" Jenna emotionally said the young man. "So answer," suggested his friend. "I don't want to." Christopher waved his head. "Okay, it's up to you." Did not pry into the affairs of a friend, John. The next day, when Christopher was going to work, he again received the same message as yesterday from the girl. And again, he didn't react to it. And again, he didn't react to it. "How's it going?" a friend at work asked. "Nothing new." He shrugged. An hour later, Jenna came to their workshop. John had gone somewhere else, so as much as Christopher didn't want to, he had to approach the girl. "You can look at my phone." She handed him the device in her hand. Now he spun it around, pressed some buttons, realized she'd made up a reason to come over. It was just the sound. He gave her the phone back. "Thank you. How much do I owe you?" Jenna tried to make conversation. Not at all. The guy realized he hadn't done anything at all. "Why don't you want to communicate with me?" she asked directly. "Who told you that?" He wasn't looking at her, minding his own business, and I could see she wasn't going to leave. "Oh, Jenna, hi. John's back." "Hi. Come visit tonight." She called them over to John. "Okay, what's the holiday?" asked the young man. "Nothing. We'll just sit around." She smiled. "It's Monday," said Christopher with a chuckle. "So?" The girl didn't understand. "Let's wait until the weekend then." Then said John, "Okay." She looked at Christopher one more time and went to your place. "She did." The guy guessed. "Yes, she did," Christopher said grudgingly. "What's wrong with her?" "She's a nice girl." His friend didn't understand. "That's it. I don't want to talk about it." Christopher got up and went to the store to buy something to eat. Okay, John stayed out of his way. Jenna kept up with him. She texted Christopher every day to say hello. They met when they went to John's house to visit. So far, Christopher hadn't paid any attention to her. One day, the girl went to the store, and on her way back, she saw Christopher. I yelled hi. He came up to her hi. "Help me carry the bag," she asked him. "Come on," he agreed out of politeness. When they reached the girl's house, she thanked the guy. "Why don't you come over for a visit?" she asked him. "No," was the unequivocal answer. "Let's go and talk, drink tea." "What, are you going to run away from me like this?" she called out to him. Good. He himself at that moment does not know how he agreed and why he went. Jenna inwardly rejoiced. He's definitely not going anywhere now. Today they had tea and talked. Tomorrow come over after work for dinner. She invited him when she went out to see him off. Well, we'll see. He put on his sneakers, said goodbye, and left. At work, he didn't say anything to John in the morning and went home in the evening. "Are you coming over?" Jenna texted him. "I'm sorry, but I can't make it tonight." Christopher texted her back. "I've been working so hard, cooking. It's all for nothing." Even in the message, it was obvious that she was offended. "Okay, I'll be there soon." Christopher thought to himself that in addition to having a delicious meal, he would also spend the evening with an interesting person. Yesterday, when they talked, he realized that Jenna was a smart girl, knew a lot of things, and he liked that. Again, they sat in the girl's kitchen and talked. "Would you like some wine?" she asked him. "No beer," he asked in reply. "I'll look in a moment." She opened the refrigerator. "No, only champagne and wine." She looked at the young man. "Okay, let's have wine." He agreed. "We can go to the store," Jenna suggested. "Would you go with me?" asked her boyfriend. She didn't care what she did, as long as she was near him. "Then let's go." They went to the hallway, put on their shoes, and left the apartment. Not half an hour later, the young people were sitting in the room on the couch in front of the TV and drinking beer. Jenna was telling something, and they were laughing. At some point, their faces were so close that the girl couldn't stand it. "Let's kiss," she told him. Christopher did not answer anything. He put his arms around the girl, and their lips merged in a kiss. An hour and 2 hours passed, and they kept kissing and kissing. "Are you a good kisser?" Christopher said to her then. "Are you too?" She lowered her eyes. "Stay." "No, not tonight." He looked at his watch and started to get ready to go home. "Okay, will you come tomorrow?" she asked. But she wasn't hoping for anything. Yes, he nodded. When Christopher walked out of the apartment, Jenna leaned with her back against the door and lit the sea. It was the first time a girl had ever pursued a young man on her own, and she had succeeded. The next day, she got ready, cooked dinner, bought beer, wine. Who knows what he'd want? And the young man came, as promised. "Hi." Jenna was very shy. She couldn't even approach him. "You've been waiting." He realized by the aroma coming from the kitchen. "Yep," she nodded. "Tonight went the same way as yesterday. Why don't you stay in tonight?" Jenna asked him. "You know, you and I have just started hanging out. Let's hang out for a while," smiled Christopher. "Okay," agreed the girl, because she didn't want to spoil the already very fragile relationship. The next day, Christopher wrote that he would not be able to come. Jenna tried to ask why, but he never explained anything. By the weekend, she texted that she was going to visit John. To everyone, he told them that he was invited too. They met again and went home together in the evening. And tonight he didn't even have to be persuaded. He stayed with the girl. Of course, they slept in separate rooms, and when Jenna woke up in the morning, she didn't know whether to approach him or not. What to do? Embarrassed, like she was 13 years old, the girl went to the kitchen, made coffee, then she made breakfast. When it was ready, she put it on the coffee table and went to wake up the young man. "Hi, everybody." She sat down on the couch where he was sleeping. "Good morning. How long has he been wiping his eyes? You should be off to work by now." Jenna knew that guys worked without a day off, so she woke him up. "Yeah, I'm getting up now," he said. "I made you breakfast." Jenna blushed for some reason, embarrassed. "Thank you. I'll go to the kitchen now." Christopher got up from the couch. He walked down the hall, and Jenna noticed that he was somehow skidding to the right side. He washed his face, had breakfast, told Jenna he would stop by again after work, and left. She was happy about it. She couldn't believe that they were actually starting a relationship. The girl got everything ready again. She had the day off today, so there was plenty of time. She waited for Christopher and wondered what they would do tonight. "Let's go to the movies." She met him on the doorstep of her apartment. "Well, if you want to have dinner, we'll go," he agreed. And they all did. And after they returned from the theater, sat for a while, shared their impressions of the film, and then went to bed again. For a whole week, Christopher went to Jenna's, stayed with her, but they slept in separate rooms. "Why don't you come to bed with me?" the girl asked him one night. "I don't know. Are you going to name it?" "You don't lie down," he answered. "But I'm calling it tonight," she said, and her cheeks flared again. Good. They were now sitting in the kitchen, and as Christopher got up and walked down the hall, Jenna noticed again that he was skidding to the right. At first, the girl paid no attention to it and didn't say anything to him. But about a month after they started living together, Christopher admitted that his right ear really hurts. Sometimes he even feels like he can't hear it. "Why don't you go to the doctor?" Jenna asked him. "Do you know these doctors? They don't say anything, but they give you prescriptions, and nothing really helps." He waved her off. "Well, at least let them do an exam. Figure out why it's happening," she told him. "No, I'm definitely not going to the doctors," the young man replied. "All right. As you wish," she shrugged. But when after another short time Christopher came home, he told Jenna a terrible story. At work, he wanted to listen to music, but since their workshop was not alone, he put on headphones, and when the music started, Christopher could hear with his left ear, but not with his right. The guy thought it was the headphones, so he took them off, switched them around. But they turned out to be fine. So he plugged his left ear and asked John to say something to him. The young man could see from his lips that his friend was talking, but he couldn't hear what he was saying. "Christopher, how could you? I told you to see a doctor." Jenna was afraid for his health. She called the pay clinic they had in town and wanted to make an appointment to see Laura. But when the receptionist listened to her complaints, she said that it is necessary not to see a lawyer, but a neurologist. "Well, then write me down to a neurologist." She dictated Christopher's first and last name and phone number. When he came home from work in the evening, the girl announced to him that he was not going anywhere tomorrow, but was going to a doctor's appointment. She had already made an appointment for him, and he would be expected there. "Why did you do that? Are you sure I need this?" he said to her then. She answered confidently, and she didn't want any more talk. The next day, Christopher went to the doctor. Jenna was waiting for him at home, worried. He dialed her number and told her that the neurologist had sent him for an MRI, saying that he was 90% sure he had a tumor in his head. Of course, this news really scared the girl. While Christopher was getting home, she called the clinic and made an appointment for an MRI. Naturally, the doctor's words really scared the young man. He agreed to undergo all the procedures after everything was done and the report was received. Christopher and Jenna sat in her kitchen, and both were in shock. The MRI showed that Christopher really had a tumor in his head and urgently needed surgery. Since the young man's residence registration was in the city where he was born and lived, they went to the hospital there and checked in. The doctor said that the operation could be done under a quota free of charge. Christopher began to take tests, and 3 days before the operation he went to the hospital. Jenna went home. She took all the phone numbers she needed to find out how the surgery went. All day long, Jenna and Christopher talked on the phone. He would tell her what he was doing, how he was being prepped, what tests he was taking, and everything else. The girl couldn't be home alone, so she went to a close friend of hers. "Don't you want to go to a fortune teller?" she asked her. "Why?" "I don't understand, Jenna. Just maybe she could tell you something." The friend saw how worried the girl was and how you wanted to help her, calm her down. "Do you know anyone?" the girl asked her. "Yes, I do." I nodded my head. "Well, okay, come on," agreed Jenna. They arrived at the woman's house. She asked for a picture and started talking. Jenna listened to her and realized it was all true. But at some point, the woman looked up at her and said that Christopher would die during the operation. That was something the girl couldn't accept. She snatched the picture from her and just walked out of the apartment. Ran home. The girlfriend saw all this, followed her. But Jenna didn't want to see anyone right now. She needed to be alone. The day of the surgery, she was on pins and needles. She wouldn't let go of her cell phone. She was pacing from corner to corner, and she didn't know what was going on. And when 800 hours passed, she knew she was going to be out of surgery. By that time, she started calling all the phones, but some were busy, some did not pick up. One number kept getting disconnected. Jenna could not find a place and realized that now it was too late. She could not go there. All night, Jenna did not sleep. Then in the morning, when it was very early, her phone rang. She saw that it was the number of the surgeon who had done Christopher's operation. "Hello," she answered. "Hello, Jenna," he said to her. Yes, she wished he would tell her something faster. "Please come over. I need to talk to you," he replied. "Tell me what's wrong with Christopher." That was the only question she cared about at that moment. "Please come. I'll tell you everything." He sounded like he was pitying her or something. "Can you at least tell me what condition he's in?" She was already crying. "I don't have time for this. When you get here, I'll tell you everything and show you." He hung up. Jenna started looking at the bus schedule. She was packing very fast. She still had 2 hours to go. On the bus, she looked out the window and was afraid that now she was not following a living person. The fortune teller's words that he should die on the operating table came to mind. And somehow it all matched up. The girl arrived at the hospital. She went in to see the surgeon. He was sitting at the table, and he wouldn't look at her. So we told him before the surgery that the facial nerve might be affected. And it was. He also stopped talking. Jenna stood around the table. She knew she was going to pass out. "Doctor." "Well, speak up. Don't be silent anymore." She couldn't take it. During the 8-hour surgery, he had a stroke on the 5th hour. We had to do a second operation. His heart stopped. "Everything is fine now, but your young man is paralyzed on his right side," the surgeon said. "Where is he? Can I see him? What is his condition?" Jenna began to fumble and realized at some point that that was it. Now and then she remembered nothing. She woke up to the smell of ammonia. The doctor was sitting on the floor with her head in his lap. "Don't worry about it. His condition is stable and serious. He's in intensive care now," the doctor said. "Can I see him?" Jenna said quietly. "Of course, the nurse will show you now," calmly spoke the man. As they walked up to the 4th floor, Jenna thought that maybe Christopher would be uncomfortable that she would see him like this, and he wouldn't want her to watch or something. Her legs were shaking, and her whole body was tense. She was put on booties, a cap, gloves, a robe. And when they brought her in, the tears just rolled out of her eyes. "Talk to him. He can hear you," the nurse told her. And Jenna took his hand and just couldn't get any words out because she knew if she did, she would just start sobbing. Christopher was lying on the bed. He was hooked up to a ventilator. There were also various small tubes sticking out of his arms and everywhere else. After standing there for a moment, she realized she couldn't be here anymore. Out. And then in the corridor, she fainted again. "Don't be so worried," the nurse told her. "All right." The girl walked out of the hospital on woozy legs. One thing was for sure, he was alive. And Jenna knew for sure that he would live on. Now every day she would arrive at the hospital in the morning and leave in the evening. At first, while he was in the ICU, Jenna didn't do anything. Just sometimes they'd let her in there. She talked to the person she loved. And then when Christopher was moved to the ICU, Jenna would visit him. She helped him get out of bed, walk the halls. After he was taken off the ventilator, a tube was inserted into his throat. He breathed through it for a while. It was hard, but the girl loved him so much that all the heaviness faded into the background. Christopher could not walk, could not move his arm, and could not speak, because after the tube was taken out of his neck, all the air went out through that hole. You had to cover it with your hand to say anything. Mostly he whispered, but when he tried to say something, it sounded like Darth Vader from Star Wars. He also couldn't close his right eye because his facial nerve was hit. When a month had passed, he was discharged home. Jenna arrived at the hospital. She picked up her favorite person from there. He was in diapers. He couldn't move around on his own. On his legs, his arm wouldn't move at all. His eye could see, but he couldn't blink all the time. The girl brought him home. She knew she had to go to rehab soon. She dropped everything and was only there for him. "Christopher, you and I will be going to rehab soon," she told him. The girl did everything the hospital told her to do. They took pills, gave her some shots. They took a cab to the rehabilitation center, but it did not take them further than the barrier, and Jenna had to carry the young man on her own. She carried him, and they were assigned a room where they had to live together. Every day, Christopher was taken to different procedures, and he really felt better. And when they were discharged after 2 weeks, Jenna took all the recommendations of the doctors. She was given a lot of methodical literature, which described different types of massage, facial articulation, and other procedures. She wasn't going to stop with what she was doing now. When they arrived home, they practiced Christopher on a daily basis. They would say different proverbs, say letters to develop the speech apparatus. Afterward, ideally, they would walk on a bench. But since Jenna didn't have a bench at home, she put a ribbon on the floor, and Christopher had to walk on that tape. The girl took him everywhere, back at the rehab center. The doctor who worked with Christopher advised Jenna to get disability. She found out everything. She gathered all the documents, took the young man there, and they got a group. Now, although Christopher did not work, but some money fell on his card every month. In summer, she left her job and got a job in a health center, which was in Sosnovyj Bor, and took Christopher there with her. Fresh air and exercise had a favorable effect on the young man's condition. So a year passed. By this time, Christopher was already walking on his own. They had almost completely developed his arm. If before it was hanging like a whip, now he could move it, but only the hand remained a problem. Also, Christopher started to speak, but only the eye was a problem. "Good morning, my love. How are you feeling?" Jenna asked him every morning. "Good morning. Fine." He hugged her then. When they arrived from the rehab center, Christopher turned to her and told her, as best he could, that he loved her. Those were the most important words she wanted to hear from a young man. Now that things were more or less working out for him, they were sitting in the kitchen, talking about something. And suddenly, we all took Jenna's hand. "Would you marry me?" he asked her. "Of course," she answered, not doubting anything. "Then you'll be the first person I say those words to." He smiled. Jenna was happy. She just didn't know how to put it into words. "Mom, I'm marrying Simeon," called the girl that same night to her. "Why do you need that invalid?" her mother told her. "You don't understand anything. I love him more than anything in the world. I don't need anyone but him, she said. Jenna, think 100 times about marrying him, her mother warned her. I don't have to think about it. I've been ready for it for a long time. The girl didn't listen to anyone. Many friends condemned her that she threw all her strength to restore the young man, said that he was not suitable for her and everything else. But she did not listen to anyone, and when they decided to make a wedding, they just applied. And on the appointed day they came, signed, congratulated each other, and the two of them went to celebrate it all. I love you very much, pressed Jenna against him. She was ready to be always by his side and never go anywhere. And you are the love of my life, he told her. They were happy until Jenna got pregnant. When she informed Christopher about it, he was overjoyed with the news. As long as she was working, she was fine. But when she went on maternity leave, and there was practically no income at all, the family began a small scandal. The pension that Christopher received was not enough for anything at all, and it needed a lot. Are you not going to do anything? The girl asked her husband. What do you want me to do? He asked in reply. I don't know. You're a man, can't you think of anything? She was almost crying. You see, I can't. He was lying on the couch. Can I? My stomach's churning, and I have to do something and earn money somewhere. The girl was crying. After Jenna gave birth, it was decided that she would go to work and Christopher would stay home with the baby. How can you trust him with a small child? I told her mother off. Mom, he's a father. He understands everything and knows what to do. Especially he already had a little daughter, said the girl to the woman. I don't know. If something happens, then blame yourself. You can't fix anything, she told her. All right, moms, that's enough. I have my own head on my shoulders. Lately, Jenna had become very irritable. Not only did she have a hormonal breakdown, she had to run home every 2 o'clock to feed the baby. Work was taking longer than usual. Christopher didn't just sit at home either. When Emily was still a baby, after Jenna fed her, she would just go to bed. And now that she was 5 months old, she needed to be held in her arms, facing forward all the time. The little girl was realizing the world. Why were the dishes not washed at home again? She'd come in irritated from work. I'm with the baby all day. What dishes? Christopher told her. And I'm tired all day at work. I'm just trying to make sure there's some income in the house. Jenna yelled at him. It was clear to both of them that they were both tired, but there was no way they could communicate that to each other. Soon after that, when Emily started kindergarten, Christopher would take her in the morning and bring her back in the evening. Yeah, he made Jenna's life easier, but she wasn't idle either. Sometimes she worked Monday through Friday. She worked weekends so she could get double pay, which meant a bigger paycheck. Why are you sitting on your phone again? She said to herself. I can't even sit on my phone anymore. I looked at her. I don't know. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired of this life. All my nerves are shot, Jenna replied. She would go to the bathroom, close herself up, and sit there, sometimes crying. She really didn't know what to do. Soon Christopher figured out a way for them to make money from the comfort of their own home. They began to make it all a reality. I'm off to work in the morning, Jenna said. Christopher was taking his daughter to daycare. Jenna was on her way to work, and now she was doing what Christopher had come up with and working in parallel. Money began to appear in the family. Along with it, expensive appliances, computer, TV, laptop, and everything else. The family could afford more now, and Jenna seemed to settle down. But there was more and more work to do. And now it wasn't enough that she was working hard during the day and moonlighting, but there were still things to do at night. I can't take it anymore. I'll go crazy soon. She was lying next to her husband. He didn't seem to have any problems at all. He slept well at night. He could do it during the day. One day, Jenna received a call from the employment center and was told that one of the organizations required a worker on a quota for a place. Of course, she grasped this information as a straw. Again, she gathered all the documents, came home. "Christopher, I found you a job. Here's the paperwork. Go apply." She handed him a file of papers. Yes, perhaps with this the girl stressed her husband, but she did not know how to do otherwise. All people live like this. Yes, they pay pennies there. He told her. So what? It's a long service. They'd been together for a few years, and Jenna didn't understand why things had changed so much and why do I need seniority. Christopher didn't understand. All people work. Why do you think you're so special? The girl didn't get it. Now that her daughter was older, Christopher had to do something with her. But on the weekends, they had to take Emily to a singing class, and I had to do something to keep her entertained. Jenna was torn. She cooked at home. Then she'd go out with her daughter, and then she had to go to work. I can't. She came home and lay down on the couch. Get some rest, Christopher said calmly. Good for you to talk. What are we going to eat? She grinned. We can live without frills. He was sure of his words. Lately, Jenna realized that they had drifted apart. She dialed her friend's number. Hi, she told her. Come and visit. After the greeting, her friend called her. I will. She packed up the department and they left the house together. While visiting, the girl could exhale a little. In the back of her mind, she remembered that she had feelings for Christopher, and as strong as before. But housework, work, and everything else. So exhausting that she wanted nothing more. Did you go through the store? A friend was wondering. Sure. Displayed Jenna a bottle of wine on the table. That's good. We'll rest now, said the girlfriend. Here, visiting lapdog. Jenna could relax. She was not thinking about anything. The daughter was busy with her friend's daughter. They were about the same age. And the girls were sitting in the kitchen talking. You look very tired, Alina said. I know that myself. Jenna realized that if before she always had her nails painted, eyes painted, hair styled, then now she didn't care about that. A ponytail on her head, nothing at all on her hands. Go on vacation, suggested Alenka. I can't. Shook her head Jenna. They could sit up till late at night. And then Jenna and her daughter would drive home. Christopher was already asleep. She developed, washed her face, and lay down next to him. Where was it yesterday? He asked in the morning. You know Elena didn't have a rash. Now I had a headache. How do I know all this? Christopher answered it all. That's it. I don't want to talk anymore, wrinkled Jenna. She had finally poured boiling water into her mug and was now trying to take a sip of the scalding drink. What else don't you want? He was kind of cocky. Christopher, please. I'll be right out, doing the dishes and vacuuming. She asked him, what if I don't feel like it? He wasn't acting like he always does. You know, when you needed help, I did everything, whether I wanted to or not. She would never have told him that, but now he's really pissed her off. And nobody asked you to. Those were the most hurtful words Christopher ever said to his wife. Well, you didn't say no once. She came over because she felt like she might cry. Did you misunderstand? Apparently, he realized he said the wrong thing. And now he was trying to get out of it. I'm going to work. Can you feed Emily when she wakes up? She turned around and pretended to be busy. Will you be long? Christopher asked her as he followed Jenna down the hall. I don't know, she shrugged. Good, he wanted to kiss her. But Jenna was already out. She couldn't show anyone her weakness. No, she's strong. She's got a baby. There's a mom to help. And there's Christopher, who has a hard time too. She wiped her tears, exhaled, and moved on. Jenna arrived at work. There was a lot to do. Today was a small children's party. The script was ready. It was left to hide the tasks that were meant for the kids. Jenna did everything. She knew that in 3 o'clock it would be over. When the kids arrived, Jenna was already in costume. She was smiling, taking everyone along with her. It was a lot of fun. The kids were laughing. They ran, played, and danced. At the very end, Jenna put on a show for the kids, after which everyone started to disperse, and the presenters cleaned up what was left after the party. But that was it. And now home. She looked around the room and went to change. She went up to her office, changed, and was ready to go out, while she said goodbye to the watchman who had just come in. Jack asked tiredly, but that's okay. Smiled Jenna. Okay, have a happy journey so far. He looked and smiled. Thank you. It was nice to have a lot of people respecting her around here. She went outside, walked down the porch, and went to the gate. Excuse me, she heard from across the parking lot. Yes, she turned and saw a very handsome man heading in her direction. She'd seen him at the party today. He was picking up one of the kids. I'm sorry to be like this, but I didn't know how to meet you. He told her. Why would you want to meet me? She didn't understand a thing. She liked him. He didn't hide it. Good. Why don't you drive me home? Jenna looked at the car from which the stranger had gotten out a few minutes ago. She didn't really want to take public transportation. Of course, gladly, he took the bags from her hands and led her to Robert's car. He got behind the wheel. Jenna looked at him. A beautiful name, just like you. He tried to compliment her. Everyone, let's go already. She sighed. Maybe we can stop for a meal on the way. Are you tired from work? I guess I offered my wife. Good. Jenna at that moment does not know why she agreed, because her husband and daughter were waiting for her at home. Wow. And I thought you would refuse me. Robert was surprised and smiled. But I agreed. The girl laughed. That's good. They stopped near a small restaurant. They went in. Robert ordered something. Jenna couldn't decide for a long time. She hadn't eaten anything since this morning, so now she wanted everything. Finally, she did it. Now they both waited for the order to arrive. Silent. How about some wine? Robert suggested. You're driving, aren't you? She was surprised. I'm here for you to relax, he explained. I could use a glass, agreed Jenna. Then Robert made a sign to the waiter. He came over and took the order. I'm so uncomfortable sitting here with you, Jenna said. And for some reason I felt ashamed of myself. Why? He didn't understand. My husband and child are waiting for me at home, and I'm sitting here with another man, drinking wine. She smiled. What's the big deal? I'm just here with a good friend to unwind a little. Of course, that wasn't true at all. Who's at your house? She asked the question because it had been plaguing her since she had met Robert today. Cat, he shrugged. I don't know what else to say. Isn't there a wife? She asked in complete seriousness. What makes you think I have one? Robert didn't understand. What do you mean? Whose baby did you pick up today? She admitted to him that she'd seen it. It's his nephew, his sister's son, he reassured her. At that moment, their order was brought to them. They started to eat. Either Jenna had not eaten in a long time, or the food here was simply divine. She was alive, and at this point, she let out a groan, rolled her eyes. Do you always eat like this? Robert laughed. Oh, sorry. The girl realized what she had done wrong. No, it's nice to look at it. He smiled. You never told me why you came up to me. They knew each other, just a little. But Jenna felt with him as if she had known him for a long time. What do you mean you didn't tell me because you liked it? Me and the guys were at your place once, and I noticed you back then. He said that and stopped smiling. What did this girl notice so sadly? A few sips of wine on an empty stomach had done the trick. She was relaxed and open-mouthed. You have a husband, kids, and I wanted us to make something work, he told her. What's wrong with you? She's tense. No, it's okay. We'll be friends. He reached out and touched her. After they ate, Robert paid and they went to the car. Should we go for another drive? He asked Jenna. No, I have to go home. She shook her head. Okay, can I have your cell phone? He asked and glanced at the girl. Yes, she answered calmly. They drove to the house where Jenna lived. She got out of the car. All right, promised his wife, and did not leave while on stage, walked into the driveway. It was nice to have someone else paying attention to her. The girl went into the house. Everything was the same there. No one had done anything. Christopher was lying on the couch again. As usual, she dropped her things and walked to the kitchen. Emily was sitting at the table drawing something. "I'm hungry," she said, now turned Jenna to the stove, and thought to herself that her husband could at least do something. After she got everything done, fed the baby and bought her up and put her to bed, she wanted to talk to Christopher, walked into the room. "Have you been drinking on the job?" he asked, and he didn't take his eyes off the screen of his phone. Stopped at a restaurant afterward to eat, had a glass, didn't make a deal. What, she wasn't alone? That's all. Did you sit there alone? Christopher asked. Yes, that's all he needed to know. Okay, good night. He turned sideways. Aren't we going to talk? She was in shock. Nothing. He kept staring at his phone. Okay. She got up and went to her daughter's house. It was frustrating to the point of tears. Why does everything have to be like this? She tries her best to make sure everything at home is good. And nobody appreciates it. Everything is taken for granted. Jenna was back at work this morning. Robert had texted her to say good morning. She smiled and replied to him. A correspondence started between them. It seemed to the girl that it distracted her a lot from everyday life. "I will come tonight," wrote Robert on Friday. "Good," she replied to him. Jenna knew her husband would be picking up her daughter from daycare, and she was going to Neil today anyway. So it was okay to ride for a couple hours. She waited for him at the gate. Robert pulled up. Jenna got into the car and said hello to him once again. "Where are we going?" the young man asked. "I don't know. Maybe the same restaurant where we were the first time," she suggested. Well, he didn't care as long as with her they had already learned a lot about each other during the week-long correspondence. Now they had some common topics to talk about. "How are you?" Robert started with the usual question. "Fine," Jenna shrugged. Nothing had changed in her life. "I see. You don't want to talk." He looked at the girl. "Order me some wine," she asked. Just like last time, Robert showed the waiter that he needed to come over. He did as the girl asked. They sat there, smiling at each other. Robert took Jenna's hand. "Don't." She pulled it away. "Why?" "I can see you're not feeling well," he said. What didn't she realize? Should we drop everything and change things for the better? He asked her. "No. What are you, Christopher?" She began to tell how they met, how they found out about the disease, and how she nursed him back to health. "You're like Mother Teresa." He was serious. "It's okay," Jenna said sadly. "Yeah, I see they brought their order. Just like last time. It was delicious." Robert was saying something, telling about his work, making the girl laugh. It was nice to be with this man. It took her mind off everything that had been happening to her lately. "Let's go to my place," asked Jenna Robert. "No," she said firmly then. "Where to?" He didn't want to let her go. "Home. Come on, I'll show you." She got up from the table. Great. He was glad Jenna wasn't going anywhere. Did the girl say where to go today? It was on the outskirts of town. When they were there, Robert marveled at how beautiful it was here. A highway followed by a field, and then the horizon. It all blended together. "Do you realize why I brought you here?" she asked. "Yes, it's beautiful," he agreed with her. They just sat in the car and looked into the distance. Afterwards, Jenna asked him to drive her home. Robert turned to her, ran his hand over her cheek, leaned in, wanted to kiss her. "No," she turned away. I don't understand why he was looking at someone he liked. "I have a husband. I love him," the girl said. "I see," sighed the young man. "Let's go then." She waited for him to start the engine. "You know, I can see you're not feeling well," he said softly. "Robert, don't ruin the relationship we have," Jenna asked him. "Okay. I'm sorry." He started the car, and they drove off. "I'm home." She went into the apartment. No one answered. Jenna walked over to her daughter, stroked her head, kissed her, asked if she was hungry. After Emily said that she and Daddy had eaten, Jenna headed into the other room where Christopher was lying on the couch again. He was with his tablet today. Is that okay? She asked. What are you talking about? He didn't understand. I'm at work all day and you haven't gone anywhere, the girl said. She looked at her husband and realized that there was a problem in their family and it had to be solved somehow. She didn't want to leave him because she loved something from me. Do you want to? He asked. I sat down to talk. Jenna leaned over to him and kissed him. Have you been drinking again? He heard the smell from her. Look, if things were good in my family, would I be doing this? She remembered how good things used to be. Are you trying to accuse me of something now? He turned around. No, she shook her head. Then what? He looked at her with one eye. Let's go to a psychologist, Jenna suggested. I don't need any psychologist. He sounded sure of it. I do. I was ashamed to admit it, but it was true. Well, go for it. It was obvious he didn't want to talk to Jenna anymore. She went into the kitchen. She wanted to cry, but she knew it wouldn't help her. The next day, when the girl came to work, she saw that there were flowers on the table. Who brought these? Was surprised Jenna. I don't know. The watchman brought them. He said, What's for you? The coworkers answered, Okay, thanks. Nice. She took a photo and sent it to Robert. Your handiwork. She captioned the photo. What did you want to make you feel good in the morning? Moody, he told her. Thank you. Now she sent it to him. In the evening, he waited for her again. Why are you doing this? Apart from being friends, you and I can't be anything else. She said it with confidence. Let's go. I'll just drive you home. He opened the door for her. Jenna got in. They drove off. They didn't talk about anything today. When they got to the driveway, she wanted to get out, but Robert took her hand. Tell me, do you really love him or do you just feel sorry for him? He asked the girl. What kind of question is that? She put her foot out into the street, and her hand Robert held it that way. Answer, he waited. If you don't let go now, we won't socialize at all anymore, she told him. Sorry, he let her go, and Jenna walked quickly toward the entryway. At home, everything was the same. For a long time, nothing had changed at all. Almost every day, Robert would come over to Jenna's house, but she wouldn't let him do anything. She just hung out with him. It was relaxed and fun and interesting. Are you working again today? One day on his day off, Christopher came up to his wife. Probably haven't called yet, Jenna said. Christopher came to her, hugged her. Jenna immediately remembered how tender he was and what they had before. Maybe we could go out, she suggested. No, I don't feel like going out. He spoke in her ear. Why does it like this? Jenna asked. I don't know. He shrugged his shoulders. Let's go on vacation. I'll buy the vouchers. We'll take a vacation without Emily, Jenna suggested again. Good. Christopher was even happier. Then I'll look for a vacation tomorrow, Jenna smiled. She turned and kissed Christopher. Tonight they slept together. Everything was fine. The next day, he wished his wife good morning and made coffee. Thank you. She was home for the second day in a row in the last 6 months. No one had called her into work. Jenna sat down at the computer to search for travel vouchers. She sat for a long time, choosing. Sometimes Christopher came up to her, asking questions, offering advice. When Jenna had everything done, all that was left was to pay. She did that. The flight was a week away. Now she had to talk to the principal about taking the short vacation. Are you ready? She had packed all her bags, Emily, taken to her mom's house, and was now ready for anything. She hadn't spoken to Robert in a week. He had won her over with texts and calls. But Jenna didn't want to pay attention to that. Sure enough, Christopher was smiling. The next day, the couple hailed a cab. They drove to the airport. In the car, Christopher held Jenna's hand, and afterward they took their bags and went to check in. Then a few hours on the airplane, and now they were almost near the sea. Their hotel stood near the sea itself. Now they were heading there. When they got into the room, they were amazed at the view from the window. On the first day, they went to the beach, but only to scout the situation. Everything was gorgeous. At first, Christopher went everywhere with Jenna, but after a couple days, he got carried away with his tablet again and didn't want to go anywhere. "Are you really not interested in anything?" Jenna asked him. "Why go out every day?" He didn't understand, but we could lie at home. They started fighting again. And what he didn't understand her grievances. Nothing, so Jenna turned around and walked away. "Where are you going?" Asked after Christopher. "To the sea. I want to be alone." And found. And cried again. Why does she always have to be alone? He's never around. Always, whatever difficulties or joys there were in life. The girl was alone with it all. It was at this point that Jenna decided to text Robert to say hi. She typed the message. "I thought you weren't going to write anymore," he replied after a second. Sorry, she didn't know what else to write. "I totally understand." "When are you coming back?" he asked. "How do you know?" She was curious. "I was at your work. They said you were on vacation," Robert admitted. "I see." After a week, she didn't keep anything from him. "Can I hope to see you again?" Robert asked her. Probably yes. She wasn't sure, but for some reason she wanted to. "Good, then I look forward to your return," he wrote. "Great, bye," she wrote and looked out at the sea blue in the distance. It was so beautiful. Jenna relaxed a little. Right now, she was wishing she had brought Emily with her. She would be running around here now. She would have loved it for sure. The rest of the week went well, but that was it for Jenna. Christopher went to the sea a couple more times and spent the rest of the time in the hotel on the bed. "We're flying home tomorrow. Let's at least spend tonight together," Jenna asked her husband. "Are we not together?" It became strange to him, as if yes, but as if not. She approached him. "Jenna, understand, I get tired quickly, and I just don't want to go anywhere." He took her hand. "I understand, but the sea air is good for you, especially for you." She leaned over and kissed him. "So it gets here, in the room." Christopher pointed to the open window. "Yes, but that's not it at all." She looked where he was pointing. Jenna finally managed to convince her husband to take her to the restaurant. He sat, ate, didn't talk about anything. Beautiful music came on. "Let's dance," Jenna called him. "No, it's not my thing." He said no. "Okay." Jenna realized she felt like crying again. They went home. The next day, they had to fly home. Jenna bought some souvenirs. The bags were packed. They were ready to go. The airplane was silent. In the car, too. They were finally home. "I'll pick up Lee on the way." Wanted Jenna to see her friend and cry, but only she came out of the house. She spotted Robert's car and pulled up. "What are you doing here?" she asked him. "You don't know." He looked at her and smiled. "I see." She looked up at her windows. "And what do you understand?" He took her hand and pulled her to him. "Wait." She walked around the car and sat in the front seat. "And what next?" He was getting curious. "Let's go," she asked. Robert complied with her request. They drove off again where it had once been so beautiful. "Do you mind?" He turned to the girl. "No, not even in favor." She smiled. Why does she have such a good relationship with this man? Willing to do a lot of things for her, and the husband she loves so much is willing to do nothing. "Tell me." They stopped, and Robert turned to her. "What is there to tell? We've been on vacation for so many days, and he hasn't even left the room." Jenna said indignantly, "Let's go to my place." He touched her chin. "Let's go." She nodded no way. He quickly started the car. They drove off. On the way, Emily called her mom and told her that they were having problems with Christopher. "She's coming over tomorrow. And I warned you." Her mom reminded her of what she said before the wedding. "Oh, don't start, please," asked her daughter. "Okay, we'll wait for tomorrow," the woman said and hung up. "Is everything okay?" asked the man behind the wheel. "Yes," nodded Jenna. She had made up her mind today that she would go with him and try to build a completely different relationship. but she didn't know if she could do it or not. They arrived and went up to Robert's apartment. He immediately set up a table, got some wine, some appetizers. He took a beer from the fridge himself. "What were you getting ready?" It made the girl laugh. "No, but it was always there just in case." He smiled, opened his wine, filled his glass, then got himself a beer. "Thank you for your support." She toasted okay, and "Thank you for everything." He took a small sip. "For what?" She didn't understand. "For what you are." He reached for her, wanting to kiss her. Jenna was ready for it. She even closed her eyes. But then she pictured Christopher, remembered how much she loved him, and what they had. "No, I can't." She turned away and opened her eyes. "Here we go," Robert sighed. "I'm sorry, I can't." She stood up. "Where are you going?" The landlord didn't understand. "I have to go home." She went into the hallway. "Jenna, wait." He followed her. "No, I'm sorry for all the nerve. Is there something you're hoping for?" "But I love my husband, and I need to go home," she said. "All right." He didn't try to talk her out of it. Jenna left his apartment. She went home reluctantly. She knew there was nothing new waiting for her there, but she went anyway. She wanted to talk to her husband. Maybe now he would hear her and understand. What if she told him about Robert? Tell him a young man was hitting on her. I wonder what his reaction would be. She asked herself. Even though Robert had offered to drive her, she hadn't accepted. She needed to take a walk, to think. At that moment, Mom texted. She told her to go to them if things were bad. Or maybe she really should go to her mom's. She stopped, but after that she waved her head and went home, even though she didn't really want to. I opened the door at home and she walked in. But when she turned around, I froze with surprise. There was nothing in the apartment. She could see that from the hallway. The TV, computer, laptop, all the appliances from the kitchen, anything of any value was missing. Jenna's first thought was that the apartment had been burglarized. She rushed to the wall, opened the closet where there was a jewelry box and money. What it was, she couldn't believe her eyes. The rings, earrings, and bracelets were there, but the money was missing. Clearly, if it had been thieves, they would have taken everything. But here she walked further, saw that there were no clothes in the closet, went to the nightstand. There were no papers either. She sat down on the couch and cried. Why did he do this to me? I never spared anything for him. I loved him. And he sobbed her to tears. Jenna dialed Christopher's number. He had blacklisted her. She tried to text him on social media. He blocked her there too. After that, the girl called her mom and told her everything. She went to the kitchen, opened the drawer where the medicine cabinet was. She took out a sedative and drank it. She noticed a piece of paper on the table. Walked over, smirked. It was a letter from him. In it he wrote that he loved her and thanked her for everything she'd done for him. But he realized he needed to leave. Also talked about blocking her so she wouldn't push pity in return. Jenna grinned. There was a knock on the door. She went to open it. Standing on the doorstep was Robert. What are you doing here? She was stunned. I realize that if I didn't catch up with you now, I'd lose you forever, he told her. Robert, he's gone. She showed him the empty apartment. What a bastard. His fists clenched. That's enough. She led her guest into the kitchen. They sat down at the table. Jenna poured tea, showed Robert what the man she loved so much and was willing to die herself to save him had written to her. I see. He read it. Pack your bags. I don't get it. She looked at him with red eyes. Let's go to my place. He wasn't asking now, he was affirming. I didn't even, she said. He walked up to her and started kissing her. It was so unexpected that Jenna responded. There would be no objection. He took the bag and started putting some of her things in it. Let me do it. She took it from him. Great, Robert said. Emily stopped in the hallway. Jenna, just like you wanted, we'll pick her up tomorrow. He put his arm around her shoulders and led her outside. You're walking. The girl was surprised. She'd never seen him without a car. I had a beer. He reminded her. They came to his house. He poured her wine and sat her in an armchair. Look, you need to calm down. I don't want things to work out between you and me. You can stay with me for a while. We'll pick up your daughter tomorrow, and I'll help you with everything. Now he's acting like Jenna with Christopher. Thank you for everything. She clung to him from the soothing wine and tears. Jenna quickly boiled it down. Robert carried her to the bed, covered her with a plaid, and closed the door behind him. He really liked her and would do anything to make sure she reciprocated him. The next day, Jenna did not go to work. She said she had a family emergency. She went to her mom's house, who worked 2 and 2, and it was her day off. Hi. She came into the apartment. Hello, her mom hugged her. And Jenna started crying again. No need to shed tears, so it was meant to be. In fact, the woman was angry, but she couldn't say anything bad right now. Knew her daughter would still be on his side. They went into the kitchen. They sat there talking for a long time. You know who helped me? Jenna asked her mom. No, of course not. She looked at her surprised. I have an acquaintance whom I think it's today we'll meet, said the girl. Just acquaintances, or her mother looked at her enigmatically. Mom just smiled for now. Jenna, it makes me happy that you are smiling. They hugged each other again. In the evening, Jenna went to daycare, picked up her daughter, and together they drove to Robert's house. And then they went with him to Mom's to keep her informed. Hello. Robert entered the apartment and gave the woman flowers. Come in, she invited him in. When everyone met and sat down at the table, a casual conversation began. You know how much I love your daughter, and if it were up to me, I'd propose to her today, Robert said. But that's okay. Now they'll divorce. And go ahead. Green light. The woman smiled. Jenna was putting Emily to bed at that moment. She came back, only to hear the end of the conversation. They married me without me. She smiled. Come back, daughter. And I advise you not to ignore Robert. You can see at once that this is a good man, Mom began to say. Calm down. My husband left me yesterday. And you're already giving me a new one, Jenna said sternly. Why is he? That hurt Robert. Okay, don't fight. Time will sort things out, said the wise woman. That's right. Today Robert said goodbye to Jenna, went home. The girl went back to work. She could not think about Simeon. As soon as she started to do so, tears came to her eyes. Why do you need him? Forget it. Go and file for divorce. Colleagues used to say. Robert came every night. He met the girl, gave flowers, until he calmed down and made no attempts to get closer. A month passed. Jenna kept waiting to see if he would call or write, but Christopher never showed up. Under pressure from her mom and friends, she filed for divorce. In a month, she was to be a free woman. Emily suffered the most. She cried just like her mom when she found out her dad had left. Everything would be all right. Resolved Jenna that she would not cry anymore. Ino looked at her daughter and hugged her. They stayed at Jenna's mother's house for a while longer, but all the time it could not last. And at some point the girl asked Robert to take her home. He did everything she asked. He has the most beloved woman. A month later, her mom called, asked how she was doing. And then she said she was expecting her for a visit tonight. So give me the weekend. Jenna was surprised, because today was Wednesday. No, I need you to come today. Mother insisted. Okay. The girl didn't understand the urgency. She picked Emily up from daycare and drove to her mother's house. When she arrived, it was business as usual. Mom, what was the urgency, she wanted to know. Come in, she called her into the room. Wow. Jenna went there and saw a gorgeous table that was set and stood in the middle. Why are you surprised? Sat down on the table, the woman sat down. I don't know what kind of celebration she showed with her eyes at everything that was here. You'll find out soon enough. At that moment there was a knock on the door. Mother went to open it. On the threshold stood Robert. He was wearing a suit and carrying flowers. Jenna immediately understood everything. She smiled. Robert walked up to her, looked at the woman and the girl who were standing there. "Jenna, will you be my wife?" He held out a box to her. "I don't even know." She looked at everyone. "Mommy, say yes." Her daughter held up her finger. You'd think she was looking at the man across the table. "You first before the answer, and then think as much as you want," spoke Robert. "Okay, I'll do it." She was angry with paint and took the flowers and the box. "You made the right choice." Kissed her. Robert kissed her. "So now to the table." The mother was happy with the way things turned out. They sat and talked, and then Robert asked her to come with him. "Emily, are you staying here?" her grandmother asked her. Yes, she nodded and looked at her mother. "Don't you think it's going too fast?" Jenna asked Robert when they were already outside. "It's okay. I love you very much." He was bringing her over to his place. "I can't tell you the same thing yet," the girl admitted. "I don't have to yet," he smiled. "Thank you." She pressed herself against him. Tonight, when they arrived at the man's apartment, he was finally able to kiss her. Jenna was smiling, and Robert could see that he could make her happy. "I have to go to work tomorrow," she told him and looked at her watch. "Stop thinking about it already." He kissed her again, and then the wedding preparations began. Robert wanted not just a wedding. He wanted a wedding, and the most beautiful one. For his beloved, Robert dreamed of her becoming a princess. "What are you thinking?" Jenna saw that he was often pensive. "Did he tell you the truth? And what did you have in mind?" She began to wonder. "Nothing." He winked at his future wife. "Okay, it's always secrets." She was really happy. And now she couldn't think about the man who'd betrayed her. The day of the wedding had arrived. Jenna was wearing a beautiful dress. Next to her stood the groom. He was also very handsome. Guests, relatives, and friends congratulated. Everyone wished only happiness and great love. "Daughter, don't doubt him. He'll be a great husband and father." "Mommy, I'm happy for you," Emily said to her. "Thank you, family." Jenna smiled and hugged them. "And you dare to be unhappy? And stop reminiscing about the past," threatened the woman with a finger. "Good," she nodded. They arrived home in the evening. It wasn't any easier with them today either. "Are you really so perfect?" Did the wife look at her husband? Naturally, she didn't. "Waited this long to start bullying you now?" He laughed. She pounded him in the chest with her fist. "You have no idea how much I love you." He pulled her to him for the second time that evening. "Do I love you?" She spoke softly. "What? What did you say?" "Say it again." He looked at her. "I love you." She wasn't looking at him. "Jesus, Jenna, we're gonna be the happiest couple ever." Robert started kissing her. "Thank you." She closed her eyes, and it seemed like she was the happiest person on earth. "Can you promise me something?" he asked his wife. "Sure." She looked up at him. "Stop being strong. I'll do anything for you." He pushed her a little away from him and was now looking straight into her eyes. "I don't know how to do that." She remembered what she had done before. "But you'll learn, promise." Didn't let go of her hands. "I'll do my best." She nodded, but didn't take her eyes away. "Good. I believe you. You're my love forever. And I swear to you that you'll be like a stone wall behind me." He pulled her to him again. "Thank you." With one lip, the girl said. She believed that happiness might be smiling upon her now.